Chapter 1359. The portraits in the guards' hands were not only of Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan, but also Chu Qingyan's father and mother. The higher-ups had already made preparations to prevent them from escaping the city. Even if they were still locked up in the imperial prison or in the king's palace, it was to prevent any possibility of them escaping. It could be seen how tightly the higher-ups were guarding against Xiao Su's group. But they were in a rush this time and did not have time to disguise themselves. Hualing was very anxious at this time, but he did not dare show it on his face to prevent these astute officers from noticing. There was only one person left in front of them. Even if Hualing wanted to turn around and leave, it was already too late because those guards had already turned their eyes to them. It was their turn. One of the officers asked in a practiced manner, "Identity, what are you doing? Why are you leaving the city?" "We are the Lu family from the western part of the city. We are preparing to visit relatives, so we ask the officers to make it convenient." Hualing walked forward with a smile and handed over the things in his hands. There was even some silver under them. That officer took the paper to prove his identity and returned the silver. "We are here for official business, we won't accept it." Hualing's heart skipped a beat. They didn't even want to accept the money. It seemed like the inspection was very tight, even his back was drenched in sweat. "There is no problem with your identity, but you must have your people lift the curtain so we can see the people inside," the officer said in a formal manner. Hualing immediately bowed and cupped his hands. "My family has smallpox and it is contagious. I ask the officers for forgiveness." Hearing smallpox, the officer's foot paused and he hesitated. When Hualing saw this, he thought he could escape this calamity. Just as he was about to say something, the officer remembered the higher-up's orders. He took the portraits and shook his head. "Even if they are sick, we still have to do official business. Lift the curtain." Hualing did not think that this person would be so stubborn. His hand could not help touching his waist. Perhaps he could only give it a try. It was at this time that a white hand lifted the curtain and a jade tablet was thrown out. "Give this to your leader. Tell him that my master is going out for some business and ask him not to make things difficult for him." The official looked at the thing that was thrown into his arms in confusion, but when he touched the words on it, he couldn't help but jump in fright. He immediately turned his head to look for their leader. Hualing's hand that was about to pull out his weapon suddenly stopped. Although he didn't know what was going on, this wasn't the time to act rashly. He immediately gestured for his people to not move. Soon, the officer came back. He bowed and placed the jade token back into the carriage. Then, he let them go without saying anything. Although he was very surprised, Hualing did not say anything. He immediately led his people out of the city, afraid that these people would go back on their words. The carriage continued to run for the time it took for an incense stick to burn. After his subordinates reported that there were no pursuers, Hualing ordered the carriage to stop. He then lifted the curtain and pointed his sword at Lan Yi, who was quietly sitting in the carriage. With a cold and solemn expression, he asked, "Who are you?" Lan Yi did not turn around. Chu Machen's father was puzzled. "White impermanence, what are you doing? Don't be rude to a little girl. Be careful that you won't be able to find a wife in the future." At such a serious time, Chu Machen's father's words made Hualing very helpless. However, he was also afraid of scaring the little Princess Consort's parents. He couldn't help but explain in a low voice, "Her actions just now were very suspicious. She might be a spy in our Fu." Chu Machen's father finally stopped talking after being comforted by Chu Machen's mother. He just kept looking at the two people. Lan Yi usually did not reveal herself. She was only in charge of the master's brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, as well as taking care of the documents. She was aloof from worldly affairs. Hualing didn't expect her to reveal herself today. It made his heart jump to his throat. Sure enough, the little Princess Consort was right. You can't judge a book by its cover. There were already 3 examples, Hong Yi, Qing Yi, and Huang Yi. Each of them was not easy to deal with. Hualing did not dare to lower his guard. He held his sword tightly and looked back at the gentle and quiet Lan Yi. What is your purpose? Tell me the truth. I am Prince Yi's person. I received an order yesterday that I can help His Royal Highness at a critical moment. Since her identity was already exposed, Lan Yi didn't hide it and directly confessed. Huo Ling was stunned. Since when was Prince Yi so kind as to help them? He used to be the one who liked to go against the master the most. Before Huo Ling could speak, Lan Yi continued, I don't know what the reason is, but Prince Yi said that I can mobilize his subordinates to protect old Master Chu and old Madam Chu. Just then, someone came to report, Master, there are pursuers behind us. Huo Ling narrowed his eyes. Just as he was thinking about what to do, Lan Yi leaned against the tip of his sword. If you don't believe me, you can kill me now and leave with your men. I won't drag you into this. The tip of the sword had already drawn a line of blood on her neck. Huo Ling frowned. Chu Machen's father, who had been watching the two, raised his hand and slapped his sword away. He said angrily, I believe that she didn't lie to us. She even saved us just now. White impermanence, you can't hurt the little girl. As soon as Chu Machen's father finished speaking, Qing Yi and Lve both whispered in agreement. Lan Yi looked at Chu Machen's father and the others who were protecting her. A layer of moisture appeared in her eyes, but she quickly covered it up. Huo Ling could only put away his sword. He ignored Chu Machen's father who was glaring at him. He looked past the young Princess Consort's confidant, Xining, and looked at Lan Yi and the others. If I find out that you're playing tricks, don't blame me for making a move. After speaking, he told Xining, I'll leave the two masters to you. Xining nodded solemnly. Huo Ling took one last look at Lan Yi. He then lowered the carriage curtain and ordered everyone to move forward. In a remote residence, Xiao Ho was still sitting under the grape trellis. His body was very weak. He could only take a short nap before continuing to flip through the letters on the table. Lin Jiangdong came from afar. When he saw Lord moving the table and chair here, he sighed heavily in his heart and stood in front of him. Have you sent them away? Xiao Ho didn't even raise his head as he spoke. Lin Jiangdong nodded. This time, we were the ones who replaced the city guard. Lan Yi handed over the token, so they let them go. Do it cleanly. Don't let the higher-ups find out that it was us who did it, Xiao Ho said calmly. I've already instructed them. No one will find out that it was us. Xiao Su left the palace. No. There's no news at all. What about the imperial prison? Chu Qingyan escaped. Xiao Ho rubbed his temples. He was very tired. Lin Jiangdong couldn't stand it anymore. His eyes were red as he said, Lord, you haven't eaten for many days. You haven't gotten your revenge yet. You can't ruin your body like this. Xiao Ho smiled faintly. My revenge has been reported. Didn't you see? Xishuan is going to be in chaos. But, at this time, a gust of wind blew into the courtyard. The books on the table were all blown over. Lin Jiangdong didn't have time to speak. He quickly pressed down on the letters on the table, worried that they would be blown away. A book not far from Xiao Ho's hand was blown open, revealing a letter inside. Shameless dear open. Xiao Ho saw the words in the corner of his eyes. The letter in his hand fell to the ground with a bang. Chapter 1360. Soon, the wind stopped and the pages of the book fell back down, covering the letter. Xiao Ho stood there in a daze, but he quickly came back to his senses. Ignoring the fact that his subordinates were still beside him, he grabbed the book and took the letter. Her handwriting was not graceful like a noble lady's, but more like an unruly wild cursive. In the past, her handwriting had been criticized by him a few times, but she had restrained herself and her handwriting was barely acceptable. He stroked the familiar handwriting and his eyes suddenly became sour. His fingers trembled as he opened the envelope and took out the letter inside. At the beginning, it was a mischievous address that made him feel helpless and nostalgic. You're so stingy and shameless. By the time you see this letter, I might already be gone. Don't blame me for not saying goodbye to you. I've been waiting for you in the manor for a whole day and haven't eaten 2 meals. I'm about to starve to death. I'm a magnanimous person, so I won't argue with you. She didn't tell him and ran over to his place to wait. In the end, she even blamed him. He had met so many people in his life, but she was the only one who dared to accuse him like this. She even pretended that he had wronged her. I know you're busy with revenge and I know you don't like me advising you to give up your hatred. But I still want to say that there are gods watching over you. If someone does something bad, there will always be someone to deal with them. Don't become someone you hate. A person can't lose their heart. I just want you to be well. That's right, I'm only thinking about revenge and I'm about to lose my heart. Don't leave, stay, and advise me. The housekeeper said that you always don't eat on time and don't eat enough. You suffered so much when you were young and now that you've finally become the Lord, you should eat to make up for what you've suffered in the past. People say that too much wisdom is bound to get hurt. You're too smart, so don't keep thinking about those tricks that torment people. Sometimes it's good to pretend to be confused, don't tire your head out. He didn't become the Lord for no reason. This little rascal, why did her words of advice sound so troublesome? He really wanted to grab her and spank her a few times. But just as this thought came to his mind, he remembered that she was no longer here. In order to protect him, she broke free from his grasp and fell off the cliff. From then on, they were separated by life and death. Xiao Ho covered his eyes with his hand. After a while, he removed his hand and continued reading. Shameless, you are a good person. No matter how many bad things you have done for revenge, to me, you are a good person. A good person will have a peaceful life. I know you're nice to me, and I'm very grateful for your protection along the way. However, we're from 2 different worlds after all. You have your great ambitions, and I only have a peaceful life. If fate allows us to meet again, let's just pretend that we don't know each other and forget about each other. If you really know that I'm good to you, then don't let go of my hand so easily. I don't have any great ambitions. I can share the peace and happiness with you. When he woke up, he found out that on the day of the accident, she had been waiting for him in the palace for an entire afternoon. From this letter, he could guess that she had originally wanted to escape that day, but for some unknown reason, she had rushed over to save him after hearing the news. She really was a silly girl. If she had really escaped to the ends of the earth, he had hundreds and thousands of ways to catch her back. He would rather she not care about his safety and run away. It would be better than being helpless right now without the possibility of hugging her. After all these years, Xiao Ho was good at disguising himself. His gentle and humble image was deeply rooted. Because he had been ill since he was young, it created a temperament that was not easily affected by emotions. Lin Jiangdong had followed him for all these years, so he thought that this was a master who did not experience great emotions. But after seeing Pang Zhijing fall off the cliff and the change in his master after finding her body, he found it hard to associate this master with his past master. He had personally seen his master's grief, as if he would die with Pang Zhijing in the next moment. Now, just because of a letter, this master's emotions had once again fluctuated. Lin Jiangdong could not help but admit that that woman had really left an indelible mark in his master's heart. Lin Jiangdong thought of the reaction of the servants these days and could not help but bite the bullet. Lord, no matter how sad your heart is, you have to take care of your body. You still have a long way to go, so you must not torture your body. The rest of the letter was a long-winded nagging for him to live a good life. It was very consistent with her usual chattering personality. In the past, he had often told her to be quiet, but she would speak with conviction. Zhijing, I don't want to be quiet like a block of wood. He was often helpless because of her words, but now that he wanted to hear another sentence, it was impossible. Have someone bring the medicine over. Hearing Lord take the initiative to speak, Lin Jiangdong thought that he had persuaded him. After agreeing, he immediately turned around to instruct the servants. Little did he know that it was because of the contents of the letter. You have to live well and live to 100 years old. Who knows, maybe in the future, I'll come and see how old you are and laugh at you for a long time. He knew that she would not be able to wait for him, but he did not want to disappoint her. Okay, I will live well. After I get my revenge, I will come to accompany you. At this time, the capital was in chaos. Chu Qingyan did not know the situation inside at this time. She and Higashio Motetsu had successfully left the city and were quickly rushing to the agreed place. Dongting, this time you came out to save me, you hid it from the Moon Palace, right? In her delicate voice, there was a certain tone. Higashio Motetsu smiled helplessly. This little girl already knew and still asked. She must feel guilty and felt that she had implicated him. Don't worry, no one will know that I came out. Right now they are busy dealing with your highness, so they have no time to pay attention to me. He said self-deprecatingly. How do they plan to deal with my highness? Chu Qingyan could not help but feel nervous. When they first came to the capital, in order to not let Sichuan Emperor be on guard, Big Ice Cube did not bring many people with him. Now Sichuan Emperor wanted to deal with him, and Consort you also wanted to deal with him. With so many people, how could he deal with so many? Hearing that she was so concerned about Xiao Su, Higashio Motetsu felt envious. I don't know. Father did not let me participate. Although he didn't participate in their conspiracy this time, he more or less knew that they had set up a lot of traps and arranged a lot of experts to deal with Xiao Su. However, in this situation where this little girl couldn't even protect herself, it was better for him not to tell her, lest she worry and be helpless. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she could not help but purse her lips and look back at the capital, which was getting farther and farther away, hoping that Big Ice Cube would be safe. After half an incense stick of time, the two of them arrived at the agreed place, but there was no one there. Higashio Motetsu put down the person and looked around. Finally, he came back with a serious expression. I checked the surroundings. There are traces of a fight. I'm afraid that there was a scuffle here before this. However, I did not find any corpses. They have probably all been disposed of. Chapter 1361. As soon as Higashio Motetsu finished speaking, Chu Qingyan's body couldn't help but sway. Her expression was blank, and her mood fell to the bottom. In order for her to safely leave the city, Turan risked his life to lure away the pursuers, and Ethereal was separated from them. Now, Water Spirit and the others' lives were unknown, all because of her. 3 of Big Ice Cube's trusted subordinates were missing. Her heart was filled with incomparable grief. She had implicated them. If it weren't for her, they would have stayed by Big Ice Cube's side and lessened the danger. What did she do to deserve them to risk their lives for her? Higashio Motetsu, who was standing at the side, saw her face full of self-blame and felt pity for her. He sighed softly, don't be sad. Maybe they were the ones who won just now. Don't think of the worst. But her heart was still sad. Alright, now is not the time to be sad. We have to leave this place as soon as possible. Maybe those people will find this place again. Higashio Motetsu vigilantly looked around. Now that the little girl had no internal strength, she was like an ordinary person, so he had to protect her more. Chu Qingyan wiped her face and stomped her feet hatefully. Hateful, I didn't expect them to be able to find this place. Little girl, this time they have made thorough preparations. Don't underestimate them. Although ants are small, they can also shake an elephant. Moreover, these people are so shrewd. He seemed to not be standing on the side of the Moon Palace, and his words revealed information to her. She knew that it was already very difficult for him to do this. She nodded at him and didn't say anything else, and immediately left with him. However, even if they quickly left that place, they were still being watched by others. The other party's people came very quickly. They were all covered in black cloth and their attacks were very ruthless. Every move was a killing move, and there were many of them. If it was a normal day, he could fight these people to a draw. But now, he had to bring a little girl with no internal strength. His hands and feet were tied, and soon there were a few more wounds on his body. Can you hold on? Chu Qingyan looked at his face that was rapidly losing color, and her face was filled with worry. Higashio Motetsu supported himself with one hand holding the sword, and the other protecting her. His expression was cold, and he no longer looked like a sloppy young master. His body was now in a very bad condition. The injuries he suffered just now were nothing, but his old injuries had relapsed because of the fight. But he didn't want the little girl to worry, and calmly shook his head. I'm fine, SSSS people, and was already exhausted. She couldn't help but ask, he was already exhausted. These people's, she, SSS, was he? Then, Motetsu was to her too. I won't abandon you. Moreover, these people aren't mice. He coughed, swallowing the blood in his throat. Then, he smiled at her. Chu Qingyan's eyes reddened. Are we going to die here? Higashio Motetsu chuckled. To be able to die with such a beautiful little girl, I, Higashio Motetsu, won't have lived in vain. What time is it now? You're still not serious. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. But it was because of his joke that she relaxed a little. Don't worry, we won't die so easily. Saying that, he quickly stuffed a pill into her mouth. This is the antidote. Then, seizing the opportunity, he waved his long sleeves and threw a few marble-sized beads at the men in black. When those beads exploded, it immediately released a pungent smell. Smoke also curled up. Higashio Motetsu took the opportunity to grab her arm and lift her up. Let's go. 2 hours later, Higashio Motetsu brought her to a secluded cave in the mountains to hide. Those people have been poisoned by my smoke and won't live for long. But it's hard to guarantee that their companions won't follow their tracks and chase after us. So, we'll hide here first and lie low for a while. After Higashio Motetsu said this, he fell to the ground. Chu Qingyan was so scared that she immediately went forward to support him. She found a flat place for him to lean against the mountain wall. At this moment, his lips were pale and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. His entire body was like an ice cube, without any warmth. Dong Ting, how are you? Don't scare me. Seeing her panicking and looking at him with teary eyes, he felt his heart being squeezed painfully. He wanted to raise his hand to pat her head, but his body was weak. He couldn't help but laugh at himself. I received a slap from father before and it hasn't fully recovered. Now it's relapsed. No wonder he had lost so much weight during this period of time. She thought that he was overworked, but she didn't know that it was because of this. She immediately asked, then do you have medicine on you? Higashio Motetsu shook his head. This is the first time father hit me. I'm not feeling good, so I'm not in the mood to treat him. My injuries are getting worse. Her eyes reddened and she scolded, why don't you cherish yourself? If your body is damaged, isn't it your own fault? Looking at the person in front of him who was glaring at him fiercely, his state of mind was incomparably calm. Qingyan, about my background, do you want to hear it? She was stunned for a moment, then nodded. If you want to tell me, then tell me. His eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. Those phoenix eyes seemed to be immersed in memories. My mother was my father's junior sister, and was also the previous palace master of the Moon Palace. My mother was in love with my father, so my grandfather made the decision for them to get married and handed the Moon Palace to my father. It was only after my mother gave birth to me that she found out that my father already had someone in his heart. The reason he married her was because he fancied the Moon Palace behind her. He needed the power of the Moon Palace to help his sweetheart. That person was my mother's junior sister from the same sect. At the same time, she was my father's childhood sweetheart. My mother left in grief and anger and never came back. And I became a child with no one to take care of me. Chu Qingyan didn't expect his background to be so full of twists and turns. Her heart was filled with shock and pity. She didn't expect that such a heartless person would have such sorrow in his heart. You should be able to guess that my father's sweetheart was Consort you. My mother was disheartened and left for more than 10 years. I haven't seen her since I was 3 years old. When he met the little girl's loving gaze, his icy heart warmed. At this point, he didn't want to hide it anymore. He was afraid that he wouldn't have a chance to tell her in the future. Little girl, there's one more thing that I want to explain to you. She blinked her moist eyes and pretended to be calm as she looked at him. All right, go ahead. Chapter 1362. Higashio Motetsu looked at the little girl in front of him, who was pretending to be calm despite her red eyes. Although she was only 15 years old, she was beautiful and moving. At this time, her clear eyes were more moving than the mountains and lakes. He didn't take the pain to heart. He smiled slightly and looked at her with a bit more gentleness in his eyes. Little girl, I originally didn't want to participate in this palace fight. You know that I hate being bound and forced to bow and scrape to others. Teasing others is fine, but if I spend all my time scheming against others, I find it tiring. If my father didn't know my mother's whereabouts and used this as a condition in exchange for me staying in the Moon Palace to help him, I wouldn't have gone against you for no reason. Your father actually used this to threaten you. Isn't he your father? Chu Qingyan suddenly closed her mouth because she thought of her family's big ice cube. The Sichuan emperor was like a tiger that ate its own children, so it wasn't strange. But she didn't think that the Sichuan emperor was strange enough in this world, and that Dong Ting also had a father who didn't care about his own son. The Sichuan emperor was helping his other son, but Dong Ting Fan was helping someone else's son. The pain in Dong Ting's heart was probably no less than the big ice cubes. It turned out that her eyelids were too shallow. There were actually so many people in this world. She didn't deserve to be a father. Dong Ting, I didn't think that your background was like this. Chu Qingyan lamented for him, but then she thought of something and hurriedly said, now that you're openly disobeying your father's orders, will he not tell you where your mother is? Higashio Motetsu lowered his eyes and the corners of his mouth twitched. Even if I comply with his request, he won't be satisfied. He uses this as a condition again and again. I'm afraid that even if I do my best, he won't tell me. Some people were like this. They were insatiably greedy and thought that they could threaten him for the rest of his life by grasping his weakness. Why didn't you tell me before? She had misunderstood him before and lost her temper at him. Little girl, it's enough to make things difficult for me. I don't want to make things difficult for you because this has nothing to do with you in the first place. He already knew that this would be the result of him saying it out loud. She was a very soft-hearted girl. Seeing him so lonely and covered in scars, Chu Qingyan didn't feel good. She sighed softly, in the end, I'm the one who dragged you down. He raised his head, his eyes flashing, and his usual playful smile. If you really feel guilty, you can repay me with your body, this young master won't despise you for being ugly. She to beat him, but seeing how weak he was now. SSSS. She could only beat him. Of it of her to ofs to beat him. But hearings of him was so weak now. R. Fine. Fine. Old. B. Do talk nonsense, talk. Speak. Be careful or I'll beat you until you're looking for your teeth on the ground. He shook his head at her and said with a regretful tone, right now, I really pity the King of England for having to deal with a tigress like you. After saying that, the sound of grinding teeth could be heard. Dong. Ting. Wang. You. Good Qingyan. Good girl. Spare me. His handsome face had already been twisted out of shape by her. Although he begged for mercy, his heart was relieved. He didn't want to evoke too much sadness from her because of his own matters. He was still used to this kind of heartless little girl. Knowing that he was seriously injured, she didn't hit him too hard. After the fight, she saw some color return to his face. She was relieved. They were in a dangerous situation. They didn't have any medicine. There were pursuers eyeing them covetously. She didn't have any internal strength. She also didn't have anything on her. His old injuries had relapsed. It could be said that they were in a hopeless situation. She had lived 2 lives, but she had never been so anxious. Dong Ting, let me take a look at your injuries first. As she spoke, she recalled that when she was in Lian City, she had followed Yen Luo for a period of time. She more or less knew some medicinal herbs. She thought that she could go out and look for some medicinal herbs to heal his injuries later. When she was about to reach out her hand, she met a pair of good-looking eyes that seemed to be smiling. I say, if your husband knew that you were alone in a room with a man and a woman, who knows how jealous he would be. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. Look at the situation now. Can't you be a little more serious? Girl, you don't understand romance at all. He shrugged, but it affected his injuries. He grimaced in pain. Chu Qingyan laughed at him. Serves him right. But when she put her hand on his shoulder and was about to check his injuries, a cold hand held her hand and stopped her. She frowned and looked at him in confusion. She heard him say, "Don't worry. While I'm still alive, I have something to give you. Can you stop cursing yourself?" Hearing his discouraging words, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but feel angry. But soon, she realized that something was wrong. Why can't I move? What did you do? Her whole body stiffened and she couldn't move at all. Higashio Motetsu withdrew his hand from her acupuncture point and coughed violently. Then, under her worried and bewildered gaze, he slowly curved his lips. Close your eyes and don't speak. She knew that he wouldn't hurt her, but she didn't know what he wanted to do. She was afraid that he would do something stupid. Dong Ting, don't mess around. If you dare to leave me. Before she could finish speaking, she stopped breathing. Only then did she know that he had even hit her mute acupuncture point. She panicked and kept looking at him, hinting that he should open her acupuncture point. However, he didn't look at her eyes. Instead, he walked to her back. She was anxious and worried. She had a bad feeling in her heart. Although his speech and behavior today were the same as usual, she felt that something was wrong. The way he looked at her had a bit of hesitation and reluctance. Her heart couldn't help but hurt. This bastard, what was he thinking? At this time, Higashio Motetsu, who was sitting behind her, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He was glad that he moved quickly and didn't let her notice. In front of him, a head of black hair spread over her round shoulders. She was beautiful beyond compare. He didn't know if it was because she had suffered in the past 2 days, but she was much thinner than before. It made people feel pity for her. Looking at her for a while, he knew that she must be cursing him in her heart. He curled his lips and swallowed the blood in his mouth. Then he reached out his hands and pressed his palms against her back. Then he slowly closed his eyes. Because she couldn't move her body or speak, Chu Qingyan could only rely on her hearing. But this person just sat behind her without saying a word, making her anxious. But very quickly, she felt his hand on her back. A warm current flowed from his hand into her body. Was he trying to release her suppressed internal energy? Her heart was filled with joy, but she quickly frowned. This method was feasible, but his current body couldn't withstand the surge of internal energy. Wait a minute. Her eyes suddenly widened. They were filled with disbelief and shock. Chapter 1363. Chu Qingyan realized that other than her inner energy that had been released to circulate around her body, there was also a warm current that did not belong to her. Furthermore, this warm current was increasing in number, and the 2 warm currents were chasing each other in her meridians. Very quickly, they merged into one. The tiredness in her body was swept away and her spirit was instantly clear. But her face was filled with incomparable shock and even panic. Dong Ting, he was actually transferring his internal energy to her. Didn't he know that this was a great loss to his body? Now that he was seriously injured, she was afraid that his life would be in danger. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Tears flowed down her cheeks and her heart was filled with endless grief. But she could not stop the endless heat flow from entering her body. At this time, Higashio Motetsu was also not feeling well. Sweat dripped down from his forehead and his face was also covered in fine beads of sweat. His internal injuries were very serious. Now that he was using all his internal energy, his internal organs felt like they were being roasted. His expression was filled with pain, but he gritted his teeth and endured. The color of blood receded from his body. His originally snow-white skin was now even paler. If it was under the sun, it would have become transparent. His internal energy was constantly being drawn out of his body, as if his meridians were being cleansed. This kind of pain was not something that everyone could endure. However, as his internal energy flowed out, his expression became calmer because he was already numb to the pain. He looked at the person in front of him and his eyes gradually filled with gentleness. "Little girl, this is all that I can do for you. Just treat it as making up for my previous frivolity." He slowly closed his eyes and his hands slightly exerted force, increasing the speed of his internal energy. Originally, he thought that even if he was standing opposite of Xiao Su, he would still have the ability to protect her from harm. But he had overestimated his own ability and underestimated the ambitions of those people in the capital. They would not even let her off. If he had not been immersed in the sadness of being injured by his father, the people below would not have neglected to pay attention to her. It was only when something happened to her that he found out, but it was already too late. Because of the sudden addition of nearly 20 years' worth of power in her body, absorbing and transforming it into her own internal energy not only required time, but also a strong spiritual power. Therefore, when the two internal energies merged, Chu Qingyan fainted due to lack of physical strength. Higashio Motetsu retracted his hand and supported the person who was falling towards him. Then, he let her lean into his embrace and placed one hand on her wrist. He could feel that her internal force had been released and her skills had improved. He could not help but smile. However, at this time, he coughed violently. Just as he caught his breath, he spat out a mouthful of black blood. His body swayed. Fortunately, he leaned against the wall and did not fall down in a sorry state. He casually used his sleeve to wipe off the bloodstains at the corner of his mouth, not caring at all. If Chu Qingyan was still awake, she would definitely be surprised that a person who usually paid so much attention to her appearance would have such a day. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes to rest for a while before opening them to look at the person in his arms. Her facial features were exquisite and beautiful. Even if she was barefaced, she was still more noble than those noble ladies who were meticulously dressed up. It was just that normally, her brows were always filled with smiles, but now her brows were slightly wrinkled and filled with worry. He raised his hand to smooth out her wrinkled brows and his eyes were filled with gentleness. "Little girl, I'm afraid that I can't accompany you anymore. How I wish that I had enough time to see you bloom, to see you happy, to see you filled with children and grandchildren, but I don't have much time left." He gave a gentle smile. "To think that I, Higashio Motetsu, have traveled far and wide, passing through thousands of flowers. I can see through other people's hearts, but I can't see through my own feelings. Little girl, it's only today that I know that I don't have any brotherly feelings for you." He gently stroked the black hair of the person in his arms. His phoenix eyes were filled with affection, so gentle that it seemed like they would turn into a pool of water. "If it weren't for the fact that you already have someone in your heart, I would definitely use any means to keep you by my side. But your heart can't let go of someone. Although I, Higashio Motetsu, am quite shameless, I know my own limits. I won't become an ungrateful scum like Xiao Ran. But, when did I start to like you? Why didn't I notice it at all?" He frowned and his memories began to scatter. Was it the fleeting glimpse when they first met? Or was it the breathtaking moment when they met again? Or was it the longing and reluctance to part when they were about to part in Jiangnan? No, it shouldn't be these. He recalled the rainy night 5 years ago. She was so weak that she had dashed into the encirclement to save Xiao Su, regardless of her own safety. He recalled that in order to find the antidote for Xiao Su, even if it was a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, she would still rush in. He recalled many scenes of her and Xiao Su. And it was precisely because of this that he began to pay more attention to her. Only now did he realize that he was envious of Xiao Su, who was able to obtain this kind of love from the little girl. It turned out that he yearned for this kind of sincere affection so much. His heart, which had been lonely for too long, also hoped to be warmed. In fact, he and Xiao Su were the same kind of people. It was just that Xiao Su was cold on the outside, while he was cold on the inside. She was like a ray of sunshine, unknowingly illuminating the loneliness in other people's hearts. This kind of warmth and light was the salvation he yearned for. He lowered his head, as if he wanted to engrave her face into his memory and hide it deep in his heart. Little girl, you have to live well and happily. If Xiao Su bullies you, you must not let him do as he pleases. You must beat him up as fiercely as you beat me. But, I know you can't bear to do it. Her clear eyes gradually turned red, and then she closed them. When she opened them again, the pain had already been hidden along with the tears. Little girl, in the future when I'm not here, you have to protect yourself. He gently hugged her and tenderly stroked her long hair. In the end, he seemed to have made up his mind to put her down. After settling her down, he slowly stood up using the wall as support. After his gaze left her body, he left her side and slowly walked towards the entrance of the cave. Little girl, since I can't be the person you care about the most, then let me leave behind an unforgettable memory in your heart. The person who slowly walked away did not turn back to look at her. Every step he took was so firm, so lonely, and so resolute. If he died in front of her in the end, she would be in pain and sorrow. But time was like an omnipotent medicine, it could heal any kind of wound. He was afraid that as time passed, she would forget this pain and forget him. He was afraid that time would bury the last memory he had in her heart. So he wanted to use his final departure without saying goodbye to leave her with a regret. Only this kind of regret could last for a long time. That was the only way she would remember him. No one would have thought that the playboy, who seemed to be frivolous on the surface, would be so affectionate. Even in the last moments of his life, he wanted to spend it alone. It was just to leave the impression he had in her heart that he was always so carefree, and not the current sorry state he was in right now. She had thought that they were just strangers, but it had become an indelible cinnabar in her heart. A sigh, a lifetime of love. Her purple robe brushed by the mountain wind, leaving behind a shallow and deep love. Chapter 1364. When Xiao Su's group left the imperial palace, their clothes were dyed red with blood. It was impossible to tell the original color of the clothes, and it was impossible to tell if the blood came from their opponents or their own. Although they were covered in blood, their spirits were very high because they had finally left the imperial palace. But it was not too early to be happy. They had just passed a tall mountain, and there was still a sea of fire in front of them. Your Highness, there are 2 more checkpoints at the city gate. The soldiers have surrounded the city gate so tightly that not even a drop of water can trickle through. Now, Jingdo can only be entered and not exited. It will not be easy for us to get out of the city. Jean Xian sent people out to investigate and quickly received the news. At this time, his brows were tightly furrowed, and his cold face showed anxiety. After leaving the imperial palace, the coldness on Xiao Su's face was still like December snow that could not be melted. When he heard Jean Xian's report, his expression did not change much. He raised his hand and made a gesture, saying lightly, "Rest first, then we'll make plans." Yes. Jean Xian retreated to give the order. Su Yi and the others only began to rest and bandage their wounds after receiving the news. This time, they had used up a lot of energy to fight their way out of the imperial palace. If they had not made some arrangements before entering the imperial palace, they would not have been able to escape so successfully today. Now, they were in the mountain behind the King of England's manor. The most dangerous place was also the safest place. Earlier, people had already come to search the manor. Now, it was an empty house. Although the people above had sent soldiers to guard it, the security was not as tight as other places. So, they had climbed over the wall very smoothly. Moreover, the manor had medicine for wounds and all kinds of things they needed at the moment. It could not be more convenient. But no one dared to go too far. They all found a place to rest in the courtyard. They were worried that there would be changes, so they could react at the last minute. Xiao Su stood by the window of the study. He could see the courtyard full of wounded people. These people were originally the fierce cavalry that he had trained. Later, because they went to Jiangnan, their willpower and martial arts were wasted, and they were taken away by the little fellow. At that time, he had thought of directly crippling them, because there had never been a coward under his command. However, it was also the little fellow who took over, slowly guiding them out of their decadence and regaining their fighting spirit. He saw that although these people's skills were not as good as the fierce cavalry, but they were enough to protect the little fellow's safety, so he let them stay by her side and did not pay attention to them anymore. However, after today's battle, he was a little surprised. These people's skills were not inferior to the valiant cavalry. The drive and ruthlessness of the past had also returned. Thinking about it, all of this was due to the little guy, who had never given up on training and teaching them. He smiled. She had always had the ability to use her passion to infect the people around her and bring them into the fiery sunshine. She was very smart and always had a backup plan. Otherwise, Jean Xian would not have brought people into the palace, and he would not have been able to escape so easily. However, she had always been thinking for others. She left all the fierce cavalry to him, but now he did not know where they were. Did Turan successfully rescue her? These questions made Xiao Su unable to help but restrain his smile. His gaze passed through the courtyard, through the high walls, and looked into the distance. His gaze was distant and full of worry. At this time, a series of footsteps hurriedly entered the room. "Your Highness, look, who is back?" The always calm Jean Xian could not help but raise his voice. He was somewhat happy. Xiao Su turned around and saw a person covered in blood 5 or 6 steps away from him. The person suddenly knelt down and kowtowed. "Master, this subordinate has returned." His voice was excited and hoarse. There was not a single part of his body that was intact. It could be seen how difficult it was to come back. "Why are you here? Where is Ian?" Xiao Su saw that it was Turan who had returned. After seeing that his injuries were not serious, he immediately asked with a frown. Turan raised his head and recounted in detail his encounter with Xiao Ran and Higashio Motetsu in the prison and their departure in 2 different directions. He said, because the pursuers were so close, this subordinate could only ask young Master Dongting to take the young princess away while I led people to distract the pursuers. If this subordinate did not have a good understanding of the capital's terrain, this subordinate would not have been able to escape this time. Later, I saw the signal that Master had sent and returned to the prince's residence. In the end, he said with a look of guilt, this subordinate was incompetent and was unable to successfully take the young princess away from the capital. We also lost nearly half of our brothers. Please punish me, Master. Xiao Su couldn't bear to scold his loyal subordinate after learning about the hardships he had gone through. He helped his loyal subordinate up and said, "We didn't have enough people to begin with, and we fell into their trap. It's already perfect that we were able to escape unscathed. You don't have to blame yourself." Turan's eyes were slightly red, and he nodded heavily. "Your Highness, this subordinate sent people to inquire about the news that Xiao Ran is still sending troops to search for my master. My master should be safe now." Jean Xian immediately reported after the two finished talking. After hearing this, Xiao Su's eyes were cold and oppressive. This time, the methods that Imperial Father used to deal with him did not surprise him. The only thing that could be counted as a surprise was his gentle 4th brother. He originally thought that he was a kind child, but he did not expect that he would have designs on the little fellow. Moreover, because of him, so many things happened afterwards. Now, he was leading troops to stand against him. It would be a lie to say that he was not disappointed. In the imperial family, only the 4 princes survived. Although his second brother was close to him, he did not stay at home since he was young and played everywhere. His third brother also closed his door and did not come out. Moreover, he resented him a lot. Because he was not in the capital all year round, he had little contact with his 2 brothers. When he returned to the capital, his 2 brothers had already grown up. Only his 4th brother was young and liked to stick to him. As the eldest brother, he felt pity for this clever and well-behaved younger brother and cared for him more. However, he did not expect that one day, they would turn against each other and become enemies. Now, because of this younger brother that he doted on, he was separated from the little fellow again. This kind of feeling was like raising an ingrate. At this time, he missed the little fellow very much. He wanted to see her smile. He wanted to hold her and warm his lonely heart. Seeing that his master did not say a word, Turan looked at Jean Xian with some worry. Jean Xian shook his head at him. His master's life and death were unknown. His Highness' heart must be heavy. Turan sighed. Now, it was better for them to quickly discuss the whereabouts of the little princess and the plan to leave the city. At this time, the sound of swords being drawn came from the courtyard. Who is it? Come out. Shao Qi shouted coldly. How much of a conflict do I have with your imperial family? In the past, every time I came here, I was either chased by geese or scratched by cats. Today, it's even better. So many swords. If I don't blink, I will become a hedgehog. A self-mocking and teasing voice came from the courtyard. It was leisurely and at ease. Chapter 1365. Turan's eyes lit up when he heard the voice. Wasn't that the second prince? Jean Xian didn't know the identity of the second prince because he wasn't in the mansion for a long time. He instinctively wanted to go out and arrest the second prince, but Turan stopped him. Don't worry, he's one of us. Xiao Su looked at the man and raised his eyebrows. There's no cat or goose this time. Why are you still in such a sorry state? Xiao Su looked at him and said, there's no cat or goose this time. Why are you still in such a mess? The man was brushing the grass off his clothes. He rolled his eyes at the man who spoke. Do you think I want to do that? If it weren't for the fact that you're so tightly surrounded, I wouldn't have thought of digging a hole to get in. Xiao Yao sighed. I can't believe that I, the son of the royal family, would crawl into a dog hole one day. I don't think anyone would believe it if they heard about it. It was rare for his master to relax. Turan smiled and said, if it was someone else, the people wouldn't believe it. But if it was you, I think they would believe it. There was nothing that the second prince couldn't do. He slept on the streets at night, put on makeup, and sometimes ran to people to set up a stall. He didn't put on the airs of a prince, nor did he act like one. That was why the Sichuan emperor didn't guard against him. Instead, he was concerned about whether he had disgraced the royal family again, so he took care of him everywhere. Xiao Yao snorted at Turan, then turned to the man in front of him and winked slyly. Eldest brother, I sacrificed myself for you. Don't forget about my benefits in the future. You don't have to be especially good to me. Just make up for it with the wine made by my sister-in-law. It doesn't matter if it's 10 or 20 jars, the more the better. After he finished speaking, he realized that his eldest brother had been looking at him coldly. He couldn't help but shrink his neck. Did he ask for too much? But his sister-in-law wouldn't be so stingy. Are you done? Yes, I'm done. Then get out of here. What is this place? It's not a place where you can play as you wish. Xiao Su scolded coldly. Only now did Xiao Yao realize that his imperial brother was angry. He was so strict because he didn't want him to be involved in this dispute. He sighed heavily in his heart. Even at this time, his imperial brother was still concerned about him. He didn't know if his imperial father was blind. He actually told him that his imperial brother wanted to rebel and harm his brothers. Brother, don't get angry. I've brought good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear at first? After he finished speaking, he received a cold glance from his eldest brother. Xiao Yao didn't dare to keep him in suspense and hurriedly said, "The good news is that on my way here, I heard the officials talking about sister-in-law being taken out of the city." After saying the first half, Xiao Yao secretly glanced at his eldest brother. He felt that his brother's expression had calmed down. He gritted his teeth and continued, "The bad news is that Xiao Ran, that stinking brat, has already led people out of the city to chase after her." Xiao Su was relieved when he heard the first half of the news. But when he knew that there were people chasing after her, his expression became cold again. He directly said to his subordinates, "Rest until midnight. Then we'll force our way out of the city." He couldn't care too much. Besides Higashio Motetsu, there were no other secret guards by the little fellow's side. Even if Water Spirit was outside to help, he couldn't be at ease. He had to get out of the city today. Xiao Yao was anxious when he heard, "How can you force your way out of the city like this? Don't you know that there are traps set up at several city gates? They're just waiting for you to walk into the trap. Why are you still running into the muzzle of the gun? Is there a better way now? If they stayed here, it would be more dangerous for them if they delayed for another day." It was hard to guarantee that those people wouldn't be able to find them in the city. When he thought of this, it would really be hard to escape. Xiao Yao suddenly changed his tone and laughed, "Yes, of course there is. How can I take such a big risk just to send you these two pieces of news?" Turin and Jean Xian, who were waiting on the side, looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Xiao Su's gaze fell on his unruly brother in front of him. Xiao Yao immediately raised his nose and looked at him. "What? Are you looking down on your younger brother? In any case, I'm a prince who struggled to survive in the palace, okay?" Xiao Su withdrew his gaze. "What way?" His younger brother was best at pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Even their imperial father was deceived by him. Maybe he could really help. "Don't worry, follow me." After Xiao Yao finished speaking, everyone looked at their master. After receiving his approval, they took their weapons and followed Xiao Yao out of the courtyard. The night was getting darker. The group of people used the cover of the darkness to walk on the roofs like ghosts. They walked silently and were even lighter than cats. In the end, the group stopped in the backyard of a brothel. At this time, there was already someone waiting there. The gorgeously dressed girl bowed to Xiao Yao with a cautious expression, "Master, everything is ready." "Good." After Xiao Yao agreed, he turned to the person behind him and said, "Imperial brother, hurry up." Xiao Su glanced at the unremarkable brothel, then withdrew his gaze and followed his younger brother inside. On the way, they could hear the sounds of women singing and swallows talking in the front yard. It was very lively. Turin grinned. It was rumored that the second prince was indulging in pleasure and forgot about home. This was probably all a cover. No wonder Master said that the second prince hid his strength. It was indeed so. At this time, the group of people walked into an ordinary room. The girl went forward and fumbled for a moment behind a vase. Then, she heard a light sound and a hole half the size of a person appeared on the ground. "Eldest brother, please." The girl went down first. Xiao Yao raised his hand to Xiao Su. Xiao Su nodded and led the others down. After a dozen steps, they arrived at a flat ground. Torches were lit, illuminating the darkness of the corridor. "I didn't expect the second prince to have such a trick up his sleeve. As expected, he is farsighted." Turin praised. The girl walking in front pursed her lips and smiled. This was just a hole that her master dug to make it convenient to go out of the city without being discovered by the people above. She didn't expect that it would be used in such an important situation today. It's better to be safe than sorry. If one day the people above want my head, I can run away. Xiao Yao enjoyed the praise very much. His feet were about to float. At this time, the eldest brother glanced at him. He immediately put away his complacency and touched his nose. The eldest brother had always been smart. He must have guessed why he dug this hole. "Our brothel is near the south gate. This hole also leads to a forest outside the south gate. The girl in front explained. Hearing this, Turin immediately said, Water Spirit and the others are also waiting at the south gate. Maybe we can see the little princess. Xiao Su nodded and quickened his steps. Xiao Yao rolled his eyes. As soon as he heard that his wife was outside, he walked faster than the wind. As expected, he only cared about his wife and forgot about his brother. He even tried his best to help him. But just as he was complaining in his heart, he walked faster. He shook his head helplessly and immediately chased after him. Chapter 1366. Although this tunnel wasn't far from the south gate, Xiao Yao had arranged for the exit to be very far away so that no one would be able to see through the concealment of the tunnel. By the time they came out, it was already close to dawn. Xiao Yao was so tired that he could barely walk. He leaned against a tree and panted as he rested. He looked at the tall and slender figure standing there not far away, seizing the time to give orders to his subordinates. Although he was covered in dust, the iceberg in his eyes was still there. He knew what he had experienced today. The reason why he was able to remain standing was because of his powerful mental strength. This was the reason why he had always admired this imperial brother of his. No matter what, he was always able to remain calm in the face of danger. No matter how big the blow was, he was unstoppable. However, the imperial brother of the past was no longer the same as the current imperial brother. In the past, he had lived too bitterly. Now that he had a chance to break free from those shackles, it couldn't be better. Not long after, Xiao Su finished giving orders and walked back to bid farewell to Xiao Yao. After today, the imperial court will be in turmoil. If you have nothing to do, don't wander around. It's more important to protect yourself. Originally, Xiao Su was worried about him. However, after today's trip to the tunnel, he realized that this imperial brother of his wasn't as useless as he had thought. At the very least, he had the ability to protect himself. Thus, he didn't say too much. Xiao Yao raised his eyes and saw him looking at him with a gentle expression. His lips were moving, but he didn't know what to say at this moment of parting. His chest was full of words. In the end, he only managed to squeeze out a sentence, Imperial brother, you have to take care of yourself. No matter what happens, this imperial brother will stand by your side. That was enough for him. Xiao Su smiled and patted him heavily on the shoulder. Then, he turned around and strode away. Turin, Jean Xian, and the others bowed to him and bid farewell. Then, they followed after their master. Looking at the black figure gradually blending into the sky, Xiao Yao called out, Liani. This subordinate is here, the brothel girl replied in a low voice. If it weren't for Imperial Mother, I'm afraid I would really be alone. Liani was slightly taken aback. She then looked in the direction that the group of people had left in. She knew that Her Highness valued her brother, the King of England, a lot. Otherwise, she wouldn't have dug this tunnel. Although it was said on the surface that it was for the convenience of sneaking out of the city, only her trusted subordinates knew the true reason. This tunnel had been successfully dug 5 years ago, and today was the first time it was being used. 5 years ago, the Sichuan Emperor had the intention of dethroning the King of England. His Royal Highness had dug and built it just in case. Liani retracted her gaze and comforted, hasn't your Highness waited for this day for many years? His Royal Highness being able to escape the abyss of suffering is something to be happy about. Xiao Yao thought about it and agreed. The worry on his face was swept away, and he looked at Liani with a wisp of admiration. Liani, you're the one who sees things clearly. Let's drink and sing. Who cares if the sky is about to collapse? Let's get drunk today and worry tomorrow. As he spoke, he walked back the way he came with his hands clasped behind his back. His footsteps were light as if he had put down the heavy burden on his body. Liani smiled and followed him. What song does your Highness want to listen to today? Take care on a long journey. All right, Imperial brother, take care. If fate allows, we'll meet again. Compared to Xiao Yao's relaxed and unrestrained return, Xiao Su's eyes were heavy at this moment. Master, we didn't see any traces of Water Spirit and the others. We also didn't see the little princess consort. Turan quickly walked to his side and reported. They were now at the place where Water Spirit was supposed to meet up with her. However, after searching the surroundings, they didn't see anyone. According to the traces left behind, there was a fight here, and then the people disappeared. Xiao Su knew this was the result, but what he was most concerned about now was whether the little fellow was safe or not. Just as he suppressed the restlessness in his heart and prepared to plan the next step of the plan, he caught sight of a red mark not far away from him from the corner of his eyes. His gaze paused, and he immediately walked over. Turan and the others were still waiting for their master's orders. When they suddenly saw his expression change slightly and walk in another direction, they immediately understood that their master had discovered something. At this moment, Xiao Su walked under a tree. There was a bough tied on the brown tree trunk. Perhaps in the eyes of ordinary people, it might be a girl who tied it for fun. However, only Xiao Su knew that this bough had a special meaning because only his little fellow knew how to tie it. Isn't this the cloth that the little princess consort is wearing today? When Turan came over, he noticed it at a glance and asked in surprise. Yes. Xiao Su raised his hand and took off the red ribbon. There were still threads on the edges. It could be seen that it was torn from the clothes in a hurry. He narrowed his eyes and said, when she came, Water Spirit had already met with an accident. She and Higashio Motetsu were afraid that the pursuers would catch up with them, so they left directly. She tied 2 knots, which represented 2 people. The loose knot represented that her life was not in danger at the moment. This was the little fellow's message to him. It was just a game she thought of when she was bored in Liancheng. She didn't expect that it would come in handy today. Jean Xian and the others were happy when they heard this. It was good that the little princess consort was fine. Master, His Majesty has sent General Li to capture you. What should we do next? Turan asked. Xiao Su wrapped the ribbon around his finger and said, let's leave here first and meet up with the army. Yes. Now that they were surrounded by enemies, they had to find reinforcements. Otherwise, they could only passively take a beating. Xiao Su lowered his head and stroked the ribbon. The soft touch made him feel a little relieved. Little fellow, you must be well before I find you. In an inconspicuous courtyard. Pang Huang listened to the reports from his subordinates, his expression unsettled. I didn't expect them to rebel. Ha ha ha, the heavens are helping me. When he heard that Xiao Su had broken out of the palace, Pang Huang laughed heartily. This was the first time he had been so carefree since the 2 armies had been defeated. Seeing his crown prince so happy, Tuali couldn't help but grin and say, we haven't done anything yet, but they've already killed each other. The situation is very favorable for us. Your Highness, should we start moving? After Pang Huang laughed heartily, he raised his hand and said, don't be in a hurry. We can wait for them to become more chaotic before we make our move. Now that Sichuan is in chaos, I don't think that Sichuan has the energy to negotiate peace. You can directly write a memorial saying that the princess died in an accident. We have to go back and choose a new princess for peace. We have to leave the capital first. That would be great for him. Your Highness is right. Our troops suffered heavy losses last time, so we need some time to recuperate. This time, Xiao Su and Sichuan Emperor are at odds. Let's first watch them fight to the death, then we can reap the benefits. Tuali smiled and calculated. Pang Huang waved his hand and approved. Your Highness, do you want to leave first? This time, the Crown Prince came with them secretly. As a subject, he had to ensure the Crown Prince's safety, especially at this very dangerous moment. No hurry. This Crown Prince still has things to do. You can leave some people behind to gather information. The rest of you can return to prepare for war. Pang Huang rubbed his chin. He seemed to have heard some incredible news and wanted to personally meet the girl in red. The girl he had never forgotten, Chu Qingyan. Chapter 1367. Tick-tock, tick-tock. There seemed to be a sound ringing in her ears. Chu Qingyan opened her heavy eyelids and saw a white light in front of her. When she struggled to get up from the ground, she saw that the white light was emitted by a large luminous pearl, making the entire cave seem like it was daytime. She knew that this was Dong Ting's doing. This person was very particular about showing off. No matter the season, he would always bring a fan with him. He also carried many strange things on him, such as luminous pearls for illumination, medicine pouches to prevent mosquito bites, etc. That's right, Dong Ting. She remembered the scene before she fainted. Ignoring her heavy body, she crawled up and looked around. However, the cave was only so big. Other than her, there was no one else. He wasn't here. Then where did he go? When she jumped up, she could clearly feel that her limbs were more flexible than before. She knew that this was because her internal strength had been restored, but she also felt that her internal strength had more than doubled. Thinking of how he had passed his skills to her without any explanation, her face couldn't help but turn pale. Why did he do that? No, she had to find him and ask him clearly. However, just as she was about to leave the cave, she saw a bloody handprint on the mountain wall. When she squatted down to investigate, she found that there was also a pool of blood on the ground. Although it had already dried up, it wasn't hard to determine how much blood he had spat out at the time based on the amount of blood he had spat out. But when she thought of the assassins she had met along the way, they weren't enough to injure him to this degree. Unless his original internal injuries had already reached an extremely serious stage. Dong Ting, what happened to you? She remembered the last time he had looked at her. It seemed to be filled with endless vicissitudes and relief. That gaze didn't seem like a weak man's, but rather like an old man with one foot in the grave. Her heart began to ache. It was also at this time that she saw a line of words carved on the ground. Casual and arrogant, it was very similar to his personality. Little girl, don't look for me. See you in the next life. She suddenly fell to the ground. Next life? No wonder he risked breaking his meridians to break the shackles of her internal strength and then passed all his skills to her. But why did he leave her in the end? He was seriously injured and couldn't have gone far. She thought this and stumbled out of the cave. She didn't care if there were any pursuers outside. At some point in time, the sky was covered with dark clouds. It was clearly dawn, but it was still dark. A huge thunderbolt exploded at the top of the mountain, and suddenly, heavy rain poured down. Chu Qingyan didn't care that she was drenched. She clung onto the tall grass and bushes and shouted loudly. Dong Ting! Come out! I know you haven't gone far. I know you can hear me. The rain ran down her cheeks and blurred her eyes. She fell again and again, but no matter how many times she fell, she still got up and called his name again and again. The rain continued for a long time. She walked for a long time and shouted for a long time. However, in the vast wilderness, the only response she got was the howling wind and torrential rain. Her lonely figure was like duckweed on the surface of a river, teetering on the verge of collapse. In the end, she missed her footing and fell to the ground in the rain. Sorrow and helplessness suffused her entire body, and she was like a child that had been abandoned by the heavens and the earth. She was so lonely and sorrowful. Dong Ting, do you know that you don't have much time left? But how can you abandon me like this? Do you think that by giving me all your skills, you can guarantee my safety? She fiercely wiped her face and took out the bone whistle from her bosom. Trembling, she brought it to her pale lips and then used the last of her strength to blow it. The whistle sounded, but it wasn't sharp at all. It was more like the sound of a gentle breeze blowing through the leaves. It was drowned out by the heavy rain. A purple figure slowly walked in the mountains. The rain soaked his clothes and also his face. After being soaked by the rain, his devilishly charming face became even more beautiful and charming. Even though he was covered in rain and looked desolate, he still looked like a touch of beauty in the mountains. It was as if the most beautiful scenery in the world couldn't compare to the faint smile on his lips. At this moment, he seemed to hear something that made his eyebrows tremble. Then he stopped and listened, as if he was listening to heavenly music. The bone whistle was a keepsake he gave her. Whenever she needed him, she could blow it to find him. This was his promise to her. However, this time, he couldn't fulfill his promise. Little girl, in the future, when you see the bone whistle, it's like seeing me. I can't accompany you, so let it accompany you. When the last whistle returned to the mountains, the person who stopped once again lifted his feet and walked into the boundless wind and rain. In the past, I didn't know what love was, but when I saw your eyes, it was as if I saw 10,000 rivers and 1,000 mountains. Even though I know you have someone else in your heart, I still like you very much. Just like the wind that flies for 10,000 li without asking when it will return, just like a moth that flies to the flame, regardless of day or night, just like the pattering of the heavy rain, falling to the ground without a sound. Could it be that you're not even willing to let me send you off for the last time? Chu Qingyan held the bone whistle. When she knew that he wouldn't appear again, she finally buried her face in her knees like a wounded little animal. She couldn't bear it anymore and started to cry. The first time they met, he forced her to help him hide his tracks. The second time they met, he still forced her to help him hide his tracks. For the first few times, she was the one who was forced. Sometimes, she really wanted to ask the heavens why she always met this annoying person. Although their first meeting was a bit bad, she slowly understood him a bit. She knew that although he had a lot of tricks up his sleeve, he still took care of her. Even when he saw that she was young and ignorant and used her, she didn't hold a grudge against him. Later on, he helped her time and time again. He was clearly a person who didn't want to be tainted by the secular world, but he was willing to sacrifice his time to help her calculate the abacus. Even later on, when she drew a clear line between them for the big ice cube, he still helped her time and time again. He said that he would protect her, and he really did it. He even gave her his life. So, that man who smiled more beautifully than a girl, who spoke like a ruffian, who always thought that he was incomparably romantic and elegant, was he really going to disappear from her life like this? After being drenched in the rain for half a day, she finally couldn't bear the weight of her body and fell into the rain. She tightly held the bone whistle in her hand, as if it was something incomparably precious in the world, and she was afraid that it would be dirted by the muddy water. Before she closed her eyes, she muttered to herself. Big Ice Cube, where are you? Dong Ting is injured, he doesn't want me anymore. Quickly help me find him back, find him back. A bolt of lightning once again cut through the sky, illuminating the world in an instant. She saw a handsome man wearing a blue monk's robe slowly walking out from the depths of the forest. When he saw the unconscious girl lying on the ground, he put his palms together and gently chanted, Amitba. Chapter 1368. 2 days had passed. After Xiao Su had forced his way out of the palace, the security in the palace was even tighter than before. In the Sichuan Emperor's bedroom, a teacup fell to the ground. You're all a bunch of good-for-nothings. You can't even catch him. What's the point of keeping you all? The Sichuan Emperor's roar pierced through the palace and landed in the ears of the imperial guards kneeling outside. They couldn't help but shrink their shoulders. They had led soldiers to chase after Xiao Su and the others, but they had failed to catch him. They didn't know how Xiao Su and the others had escaped from the capital, but the Sichuan Emperor was furious. Your Majesty, please calm down. Don't bother with that bunch of good-for-nothings. Take care of your body. Consort Yu stood by his side with a bowl of medicine and comforted him in a soft voice. The imperial court had been in an uproar over the past 2 days because of the Fu and Liang families. The Sichuan Emperor was so annoyed that he fainted on the dragon throne. I don't want to bother with them, but they are useless. They didn't catch anyone and instead let the tiger return to the mountain. Do you know that I am removing obstacles for Ranner? If I don't deal with Xiao Su, I won't be at ease even if Ranner becomes the crown prince in the future. The Sichuan Emperor patted the back of Consort Yu's hand as he spoke with disappointment. He was still angry. I understand your majesty's worries. Since these people are useless, why don't the imperial court's generals capture them? The Fu family has a few good men. Your majesty can consider them. Consort Yu took the opportunity to recommend the Fu family to him with a smile on her face. She looked as if she was sharing his worries. The West Xian Emperor's hand paused as he patted Imperial concubine Yu's hand. His eyes dimmed slightly. He looked up at his beloved who was looking down at the bowl of medicine. She was gentle and delicate, as though she had walked out of the misty rain in Jiangnan. She had a hazy beauty. His features couldn't help but soften. You know how much the Fu family has been exposed recently. If I continue to use the Fu family, I'm afraid I won't be able to convince the public. Consort Yu's hand that was holding the bowl trembled. However, the Sichuan Emperor's gaze was on her face and he didn't notice it. Consort Yu's lips curled up. Consort Yu's eyes. When she looked at the Sichuan Emperor, her eyes. Your Majesty, I was wrong. I shouldn't have made such unreasonable requests at this time. I only wanted them to atone for their crimes with merit. This time, they really went too far. I am very resentful in my heart. A man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. This is the truth. Consort Yu knew that His Majesty was really going to attack the Fu family this time. He still asked her to serve by his side because he valued their past relationship and sincerely wanted to help Ranner ascend the throne. Therefore, Consort Yu knew how to manipulate the Sichuan Emperor's emotions. She immediately blamed herself. Her attitude showed that he pitied her the most. As expected, the Sichuan Emperor was very satisfied that she was able to see clearly that he was the most important person in her heart. He reached out to touch her face and smiled. Tell Ranner to come back. I have something important for him to do. Consort Yu's eyes lit up. If His Majesty could mention something important, it meant that His Majesty was really going to cultivate Ranner's power. She immediately smiled gently. As you wish. At this moment, there was a commotion outside. I want to see His Majesty. How dare you stop me? Men, take them away and flog them 50 times. The Sichuan Emperor frowned and asked the person beside him, who is making a ruckus outside. Eunuch Chao immediately said, this old servant will go out and take a look right now. With that, Eunuch Chao jogged out. Consort Yu lowered her eyes and curved her lips slightly. Empress Liang had come as expected. She had only purposely let someone leak the news to her, and she had rushed over. From the looks of it, she would definitely offend His Majesty later. What a good show. With that thought, Consort Yu fed the Sichuan Emperor even more gently and meticulously. This made the Sichuan Emperor very satisfied. Yu was still more to his liking. At this moment, Eunuch Chao hurried in. Your Majesty, Her Majesty the Empress is requesting an audience. The Sichuan Emperor's expression instantly turned ugly. I won't see her. It wasn't easy for us to be able to relax. We don't want her to cause trouble. Eunuch Chao hesitated and tried to persuade him. The Empress had already been here several times, but she always came back empty-handed. This time, if she was invited back again, according to what she saw just now, she probably wouldn't let it go. At this moment, Consort Yu spoke. She looked at the Sichuan Emperor with watery eyes. It seems that elder sister is also worried about your Majesty's health. If your Majesty doesn't allow elder sister to see you, elder sister will be sad again. The Sichuan Emperor saw that she was so obedient and kind. He sighed softly. You're always so soft-hearted. Forget it, we'll see her. There are some things that need to be resolved. When he said the last sentence, a murderous look flashed across the Sichuan Emperor's eyes. Eunuch Chao looked gratefully at Consort Yu. Consort Yu was still the most considerate one. Then, she quickly went to open the door. Consort Yu smiled proudly. Empress Liang was smart, but she didn't know how to win people's hearts. That was why she could be like a fish in water in the palace, while Empress Liang could only be a resentful woman. Empress Liang had received the news that Consort Yu had entered the palace to serve His Majesty. When she thought of how she had been refused the entrance several times, she felt resentful and impatiently rushed to the bedchamber. When she was stopped outside the palace again, she imagined the two people in the palace being lovey-dovey while she was treated coldly. Her heart instantly felt unbalanced. When she received the edict and entered, she remembered the Mama's instructions. She had been told to be gentle to attract His Majesty's attention. She had wanted to suppress her temper, but when she saw Consort Yu shamelessly snuggling up to His Majesty like a water snake, her temper flared up again. She walked with an aggressive aura. "Greetings to your Majesty." She curtsied. Sichuan Emperor raised his hand. "Empress, rise." Sensing His Majesty's coldness, Empress Liang vented her anger on Consort Yu. "Consort Yu, why aren't you curtsying when you see Ben Gong? Are you trying to climb over Ben Gong's head?" Consort Yu immediately wanted to curtsy in terror when she heard this, but Sichuan Emperor stopped her. Consort Yu looked at him in shock. Sichuan Emperor felt even more pity for her. He looked at Empress Liang's angry face and said with a frown, "Consort Yu is serving Zhen's medicine. Do you think Zhen is more senior than you? Are you trying to climb over Zhen's head?" These words were like cold water that splashed Empress Liang's face white. "Qinxie doesn't dare." Sichuan Emperor could only snort coldly when he heard this. At an angle that Sichuan Emperor wasn't paying attention, Consort Yu gave Empress Liang a threatening look that made her even angrier. Consort Yu felt that she had already achieved half of her goal, so she didn't want to stay any longer. She stood and said, "Your Majesty, please calm down. Older sister didn't mean it. Older sister must have something important to discuss with your Majesty. You, will take her leave first." With Empress Liang as a comparison, Sichuan Emperor felt that Consort Yu was even more polite and respectful. His disgust for Empress Liang increased. "Go." Consort Yu curtsied and left. When she passed by Empress Liang, Sichuan Emperor gave her a mocking smile. If Sichuan Emperor wasn't present, Empress Liang really wanted to tear this slut's face apart. Chapter 1369. Consort Yu left the hall and walked down the long corridor with the palace servants. She stopped in front of a flower bed. She thought back to how she had just mentioned that the emperor had refused to let the soldiers of the Fu family in court take the order to capture Xiao Su. Her heart chilled. It looked like the emperor was determined to move against the Liang and Fu families this time. She knew His Majesty's motive for doing this, but how could she watch as the Fu family was sacrificed by His Majesty? Also, Ranner needed the support of the Fu family in the future. If he lost this support, how could he maintain a foothold in court? When she thought of this, a trace of viciousness flashed through Consort Yu's eyes. As though she had made a decision, Consort Yu's footsteps were no longer as light as before. Without imperial concubine Moon, Empress Liang's expression softened a great deal. But when she saw His Majesty's cold and indifferent attitude towards her, her heart filled with sorrow. However, she did not forget her goal in coming here. She took several steps forward and earnestly said, "Your Majesty, please uphold justice for this concubine." "Uphold justice?" Sichuan Emperor raised his eyelids. "What do you want us to uphold justice for you?" Empress Liang gritted her teeth and knelt down. "Your Majesty, our Liang family has been wronged. My father and younger brothers are loyal and devoted to Sichuan. They would never do anything to betray your Majesty. You have to uphold justice for our Liang family. Also, what crime did Su commit? Why do you want to kill him? What crime did he commit?" Sichuan Emperor glanced at her coolly. "Empress, are you done?" She had said so much in a humble voice, but His Majesty looked disinterested. Empress Liang was deeply hurt, but for the Liang family and Su, she could only suppress her grievances. She nodded. "This concubine is done. If you are done, then return to your Chaoyang palace," Sichuan Emperor said coolly. Empress Liang's eyes widened. She looked up at the person lying on the bed, her eyes filled with disbelief. "Your Majesty, you can't treat this concubine like this. You can't treat Su-er like this. He's your own flesh and blood, your eldest son of the first wife. When you ascended the throne, our Liang family didn't work hard, but we also spent a lot of effort. You can't kill the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness and cut off the Liang family's path to survival. Sichuan Emperor's eyes turned cold in an instant. What he hated the most in his life was people using the past to threaten him. Which emperor would be willing to admit that he ascended the throne with the help of his relatives? Without a doubt, Liang Ho had crossed his bottom line. This was the difference between Liang Ho and Consort Yu. One was aggressive while the other pretended to be soft. Therefore, Liang Ho would never be able to win against Consort Yu. Empress, you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. From his voice, it was obvious that the Sichuan Emperor was enraged. How could Empress Liang not understand? But at this time, if she retreated, the Liang family and Su-er's fate would be sealed. She looked up and said, Your Majesty, how has our Liang family wronged you? Su-er has conscientiously protected the Sichuan Empire for you. How has he not done well? This concubine has guarded the imperial harem for you. Even if you often stayed in the Moon Palace, this concubine has never complained to you. Why can't you be magnanimous and let us go? Liang Yuan, do you know what you are saying? Sichuan Emperor narrowed his eyes at her, hostility rising in his eyes. Do we need your permission to punish people? As the master of the imperial harem, you should know that the imperial harem cannot interfere in politics. At this time, Liang Ho's back stiffened when she was called by her full name. We are telling you, this time, the Liang family will not be able to escape Sichuan's laws. No matter how you plead, we will not change our mind. She thought that His Majesty would not pursue the Liang family's mistakes on account of their past relationship. However, she was wrong. His Majesty had wanted to get rid of the Liang family from the beginning. It was just that he never had the right time, so he kept delaying it. Now that the Liang family and Fu family's crimes were brought to the table, it proved that he wanted to deal with them boldly and decisively. But Su-er is our flesh and blood. Do you also want to exterminate him? Liang Ho tightly grasped at this life-saving straw, hoping that he would change his mind. Sichuan Emperor sneered, Empress, you should know that we do not want him to take the position of crown prince more than anyone else. Put away your thoughts. Your beautiful dream of working with your Liang family to push him onto the throne will end here. For the sake of Consort Yu, that slut's son, you will not even care about your own eldest son? Your Majesty, you cannot be so biased. Empress Liang's heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Her voice was mournful. Sichuan Emperor said coldly, Empress, you should know that we stepped over the corpses of our brothers to get to this position. When it is time to sacrifice, we must sacrifice. Liang Ho stared blankly at the man in front of her, whom she had loved all her life. She vaguely remembered that when he came back from horseback, he was a handsome young man with picturesque features. Now, in the blink of an eye, his eyebrows were covered with frost. He was murderous and cold. Now, he would not even spare his own son. So, a while ago, when I was not feeling well, you told people not to disturb me and often went to check on me, making me mistakenly think that you doted on me. In fact, you wanted to cut me off from the outside world. So, when you attacked the Liang family and Su-er, I knew nothing about it. It was all for today. Empress Liang's sorrowful expression was no longer as arrogant and despotic as before. Sichuan Emperor's anger subsided a little. He nodded and admitted, that's right. Empress Liang collapsed to the ground and covered her face with her hands. This was the person she had poured her heart of love into and risked her life to love. Now, he was not even willing to lie to her. Chao Ji. Present. Send the Empress back to Chaoyang Palace. Without our permission, she is not allowed to take a step out of the palace. Eunuch Chao was stunned. Was His Majesty planning to put the Empress under house arrest? Under His Majesty's cold gaze, Eunuch Chao immediately ordered his men to take Empress Liang away. Hearing this, Empress Liang's heart was in chaos. She cried and shouted, "What's so good about Consort you? Is it worth your majesty doing this for her? I can't accept it. Haven't you seen what I've done for you all these years? Why are you doing this to me? Have you forgotten the vow under the moon that you will never forget me?" Sichuan Emperor looked at her with a cold gaze. "Liang Yuan, our majesty has never admired you. Our majesty likes the Liang family behind you. You, is the only woman our majesty cares about." These words were more violent than a bolt from the blue. Empress Liang was shocked and stood in place. She looked straight at him as if she was looking at a stranger. "So, everything is fake. You used me, you used our Liang family, and you even used Su, as a stepping stone for your great empire? Just to be a stepping stone for your good son. You can think of it that way." Sichuan Emperor did not want to talk to her anymore. He waved his hand and ordered his men to take her away. Empress Liang stood up shakily. The shock and bitterness in her eyes slowly turned into hatred. "Your Majesty, you are so cruel." If there was no hatred in Empress Liang's eyes, she would not believe that there would be white hair in the world. Chapter 1370. When Consort Yu found out about Liang Ho's situation, most of the gloom in her heart dissipated. "Ha, Liang Yuan, you want to fight with me? You're still far from it. Don't you know who I am? How could a woman who grew up in a secluded courtyard compare to her experiences in the outside world?" At this moment, Jade Rabbit entered the hall. She curtsied in front of Consort Yu and softly said, "Your Highness, His Highness has returned." Consort Yu's eyes lit up. "Let him in quickly." Not long after, Xiaoran came in covered in dust. He frowned slightly as he looked at the person who had stood up to greet him. "Mother, I is still searching for Qingyan's whereabouts. Why did you call I back in such a hurry? Did something happen? How could Consort Yu not know what he was thinking?" She smiled and said, "Mother knows that you're anxious about Chu Qingyan's matter, but your imperial father has something important to tell you." "Imperial father is looking for I." Xiao Ran's eyes lit up. He planned to immediately go to his imperial father's quarters. "Ranner, why are you in such a hurry? Your imperial father is in the palace. Are you afraid that you won't be able to find him?" Consort Yu immediately pulled him back when she saw him in such a hurry. Xiao Ran was a bit confused. "Didn't you say that imperial father has something to do? I will go and see what's going on first before leaving the city to find Qingyan." Consort Yu was displeased when she saw that he was so focused on Chu Qingyan. She shook her head and sighed, as expected, a grown son can't keep his mother. She can't even let her son accompany me. Xiao Ran's face turned red when he heard this. He grabbed Consort Yu's loosened hand and said shamelessly, "Mother, I didn't mean that. You're the person that I cares about the most." Consort Yu became happy when she heard this. She then took her precious son's hand and sat down on the couch. She patted the back of his hand and reminded, "Mother knows that you want that girl from the Chu family to accompany you, but whether you can keep her or not depends on your imperial father's intentions. The matter that your imperial father gave you this time definitely has something to do with Xiao Su. No matter what, you have to agree to it and follow your imperial father's wishes. Only then can we have a good life." After she said this, Xiao Mother's words, "Mother, why do you say that? Doesn't imperial fathers most?" Consort Yu smiled softly, Mother is going to teach you a lesson today. The emperor's heart is hard to predict. If you want to have a foothold in the imperial palace, then you have to follow the wishes of the person who holds the imperial power. Otherwise, your eldest brother's end and Empress Liang's end will be our end." She knew that the Sichuan emperor had feelings for her, but the most fickle thing in the world was the human heart. She couldn't guarantee that he would treat her the same for the rest of her life. Otherwise, the Fu family's matter wouldn't have become so big. He doted on her, but at the same time, he was the ruler of a country. In his heart, the country was more important than the family. If the small family implicated the country, then all of his feelings would dissipate. The reason why he doted on her was because she wasn't like Empress Liang, who was unreasonable and interfered with the court. If there was a day when she was involved, she would become the second Empress Liang. She was able to become the imperial concubine because she saw things more clearly than Empress Liang. She wasn't like her, who didn't care at all and had her bones crushed in the end. Xiao Ran nodded as if he understood. He had always been obedient since he was young, and his mother would never harm him. Today, mother is saying these things to I. Is there something you want I to do? Consort Yu nodded in satisfaction. Her son was very smart and immediately understood her intentions. With Chu Qingyan's status, your imperial father will never let her become your empress. However, if you want her to stay by your side, it's not impossible, unless you already have a prince's consort. Does mother mean that imperial father is worried that I will put Qingyan in the position of consort, so he summoned I back and stopped I from looking for her? Xiao Ran understood immediately and his eyes were filled with surprise. Consort Yu nodded. Based on her experience of following the emperor for so many years, she knew that he was a very controlling person. The reason he liked her and Ranner was because they were obedient. Therefore, when it came to Ranner's marriage, he definitely wouldn't allow Ranner to make his own decisions. If you want to keep Chu Qingyan after everything is settled, then you have to settle the marriage first. Originally, the wedding was supposed to be held in 2 days, but because of the delay, it couldn't be held as scheduled. Your imperial father probably wants to talk to you about this matter. I'm afraid that you will argue with his imperial majesty, so I called you here in advance. I'm afraid that you will ruin things. Consort Yu naturally knew how her son felt about Chu Qingyan. Before, he had agreed to the marriage with the Jing family because he had no choice. Now that Xiao Su had escaped from the palace, the court was going to be reshuffled. She was afraid that he wouldn't understand and bring up the old matter again. If he refused the marriage, then he would offend his imperial majesty. I understand, imperial mother, don't worry. Indeed, it was just as his mother had said, he needed the support of a powerful relative. Xiao Ran already had a plan in his heart, he would leave the position of a concubine for Qingyan. She was so considerate, she should be able to understand his difficulties. As long as you understand imperial mother's painstaking efforts, that's enough. Consort Yu looked at her son in front of her and felt more and more satisfied. In a secluded courtyard, it was a bit shabby, but it was good because of vines and green leaves that kept the heat away. It was cool under the shade of the trees. Xiao Ho just sat there, playing with the exquisite chains and listening to the reports of his subordinates. The news that the King of England broke out of the palace was suppressed by His Imperial Majesty. Now, very few people know that His Imperial Majesty is going to make a move on the King of England. Even though the capital is heavily guarded, Xiao Ran and Li Weiyuan led soldiers out of the city to chase after him. To the outside world, they say that a thief broke into the palace and that they were ordered to capture him. What else? Today, Xiao Ran went into the palace and talked with His Imperial Majesty behind closed doors for an entire afternoon. Then, it was announced that in 2 days, Xiao Ran will be engaged to the Jing family. After the engagement, Xiao Ran will personally lead soldiers to chase after the escaped assassins. After the report, the spy lowered his head and waited for orders. Xiao Ho laughed lightly. His imperial father was taking advantage of the chaos to stabilize Xiao Ran's power. He wanted to let the people in court know who he valued, so that they wouldn't alienate Xiao Ran because of the Fu family. Xiao Ran was the only one who could make imperial father spend so much effort to dote on her since she was young. Didn't he want to suppress the news? This prince won't let him do as he wishes. Go and have people spread the news that His Imperial Majesty framed the King of England. Because of his merits, he wants to get rid of the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness. Moreover, if he wants to make a move on Liang Fu and the Liang family, then let's add fuel to the fire. When the time comes, let's see how he will deal with it. Yes, this subordinate will do it right away. These 2 fires were not only for him, but also for his eldest brother. If he made the water muddy, then his imperial father wouldn't have so much energy to deal with his eldest brother. After the spy left, Xiao Ho stroked the chains in his hand and smiled lightly. Little rascal, I'm going to start my revenge. You have to stay with me and don't go too far. Chapter 1371. After that heavy rain, Chu Qingyan began to have a fever. She was unconscious for 2 whole days and only woke up on the morning of the 3rd day. She opened her heavy eyelids, but the sunlight was too dazzling. She immediately closed her eyes and waited for her eyes to adapt to the light before slowly sitting up. Her entire body was sore as if she had been crushed by something, but this was not the main point. Everything in front of her was very unfamiliar. Although the simple and crude house was small and tidy, it still made her vigilant. Just as she was propping up her aching head, the wooden door creaked. Someone had pushed the door open and entered. She immediately pulled out the hairpin in her hair. If the person did not come with good intentions, she would directly throw it. However, to her surprise, the person who came was an old granny. She was holding a bowl in her hand. While she was stunned, the old granny said in surprise, "Miss, you're awake. You scared this old granny. I thought you were going to continue sleeping." Because her skills had improved, she could tell from the old granny's walking and breathing that she did not practice martial arts and was just an ordinary woman. Only then did she let out a sigh of relief and return a smile. "Was it Granny who saved me?" The old granny walked in front of her and handed the bowl to her. "It wasn't Granny. It was the Great Master who saved you. This is the medicine that the Great Master asked this old granny to brew for you. Quickly drink it so that your illness can quickly recover." Chu Qingyan obediently nodded. After drinking the medicine, she found out that she had been drenched in the rain and had a high fever. Fortunately, someone had saved her, otherwise she would have died in the wilderness. The Great Master that the old granny spoke of was an enlightened monk. He had saved her before, so she called him her benefactor. This time, he was passing by the forest and brought her to the old granny to take care of her. An enlightened monk? In her impression, there seemed to be such a person. As if to confirm her guess, the sound of the pagoda bell came from outside the door. She was thinking about Su Yi when a green monk robe appeared in her line of sight. Although the material was ordinary, it was very neat and did not have a single crease on it. Chu Qingyan slowly raised her head and looked at the tall figure standing in the middle of the room. His sleeves were gently swaying, his posture leisurely. His features were white, like spring plums blooming with snow. His temperament was clean and holy, like autumn chrysanthemums covered in frost. It was as if as long as he appeared, lotus flowers would bloom wherever he passed. "Almsgiver Chu, how have you been?" His gentle voice was like the gentle recitation of Buddhist scriptures, washing away all distracting thoughts. Only his voice remained, echoing in one's ears. Chu Qingyan smiled bitterly. "Do you think I've been well since we last met?" When the other party heard this, she also felt that it was inappropriate. When she was thinking about what to say instead, she chuckled and thought to herself, "This person is still so easy to fool. Long time no see, Shujian." The person who was deep in thought heard the joy in her depressed mood, and for some reason, her eyes curved into crescents as she smiled and said, "It has indeed been a long time." The old lady knew that she shouldn't disturb the two of them, so she took the empty bowl and left. Chu Qingyan retracted her gaze from the old lady's back. Since she knew that he was the one who saved her, there was nothing to worry about. She leaned against the bed wall and looked up at Shujian with a grateful smile. "Thank you for saving me. Otherwise, I really would have become food for the wild beasts on the mountain." Seeing that she could still joke around, Shujian's heart, which had been hanging in the air for the past few days, finally relaxed. He sat down on the wooden chair and said modestly, "It's nothing. It's not worth mentioning." Chu Qingyan looked at him. Even though he was sitting on an old chair with missing legs, it still gave the illusion that he was sitting on a lotus platform. She sighed in her heart. As expected, his looks were good. Everything he did was different from others. She chuckled and said, "It seems that saving people is a common occurrence to you." "It's nothing. It's not worth mentioning." Shujian heard the teasing in her voice. It seemed that he would say this every time he saw her. He couldn't help but laugh. Buddhism is about delivering all living beings from torment. When one is in trouble, one should help. This is the so-called, saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. It seems that just saving me is enough for you to build a 10-storied pagoda. Chu Qingyan teased. Perhaps because they had interacted a few times, he was moved by her familiar tone and couldn't help but agree. Benefactor Chu is right. It seems that this poor monk can complete the great cause of pagoda by staying by Benefactor Chu's side in the future. Chu Qingyan chuckled when she heard this. It seemed that this person wasn't ignorant. She nodded and said generously, "Well said, well said." Seeing her relaxed expression, Xujian also smiled. Then, he asked in confusion, why did Benefactor Chu faint on Mount Feng? After hearing this, her eyes darkened. We were being hunted down and had been running for our lives. We didn't expect to end up here by accident. She thought of Dongting, who had left without saying goodbye. Her head hurt even more, and she was enveloped in grief. Xujian could clearly sense her low spirits. His gaze fell on her face. The shadows cast by her thick and long eyelashes covered her eyes. He didn't know what she was thinking at the moment. However, after not seeing her for so many months, she had grown a lot taller. Her chin was sharper, and she looked even more beautiful than water spirit. This was one of the few words of praise he had learned about women in the past decade or two. This poor monk heard some news these past few days. It said that His Majesty was attacked by an assassin. The entire capital is on high alert, searching for the assassin. Yesterday, this poor monk saw guards appear in the mountains. Chu Qingyan's lips curled into a mocking smile when she heard this. That was Sichuan Emperor crying thief. She raised her head and asked him, "Xujian, if I said that the person they wanted to capture was me, would you hand me over?" Xujian looked at the woman sitting upright on the bed. Her gaze was calm, and her expression was indifferent as she looked back at him. It was as if she wasn't asking about her own life or death, but rather an unimportant question. This girl who was so calm and collected made his brows soften. He put his palms together and said, "This poor monk is a monk. I don't care about the secular world, and I definitely won't interfere with the disputes of the imperial family." Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. Did he mean that he knew what had happened between them and Sichuan Emperor? But then she thought about how he was a charlatan. He could divine anything he wanted to know, so she wasn't surprised. "Thank you, Xujian." She had been testing him just now, and his reaction had made her heave a sigh of relief. She could not fall into the hands of the West Xian the Arch and the others again. Otherwise, it would be a waste of Big Ice Cube's effort to save her. Xujian smiled faintly. "Xujian, can you find out news about the capital?" She was now a target of arrest and couldn't easily show herself. Thus, she placed her hopes on him. Xujian shook his head. This poor monk can't interfere with the secular world. He had already made an exception by saving her. He couldn't make another exception. Chu Qingyan knew that she had made things difficult for him, so she settled for the next best thing. "Then can you get someone to help me look for my companion? He got separated from me at Phoenix Mountain." Xujian hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded as he looked into her bright eyes. "This poor monk will do his best." "Thank you." Chu Qingyan thanked him with reddened eyes. Because she had been seriously ill and had spoken for so long, she was already exhausted. Xujian didn't stay any longer. He told her to rest well and left the room. Standing outside the room, Xujian looked at the rosy clouds on the horizon after the storm and sighed softly. Her friend was probably no longer at Phoenix Mountain. The pagoda bell rang in the distance. Chu Qingyan slowly fell asleep to the faint sound. Perhaps she would never know in this lifetime that Xujian's appearance in the forest to save her wasn't an accident. He had only come down the mountain because he had divined that she was in trouble. Chapter 1372. After staying in the wooden hut for another 2 days, Chu Qingyan felt that her body was recovering very slowly. In the past, she would have recovered in less than 2 days, but this time, for some reason, it took so long. As she thought about it, she started coughing again, as if she wanted to cough out her lungs. At this moment, footsteps sounded from outside. She could tell that the old granny had come in. As expected, "Miss, you're coughing again. Quickly drink this medicine." The old granny handed her a bowl of medicine with the fragrance of loquats. Chu Qingyan gratefully took it. After spending a few days together, she found out from the old granny that this was the mountainside of Mount Feng. Because the wooden hut was built in a remote area, very few people would pass by here except for the common people who chopped firewood. She finally understood why Su Jian had arranged for her to recuperate here. This was indeed a safe place. Seeing that she had finished drinking, the old granny went out again, saying that she was going to make chicken soup for her to nourish her body. Chu Qingyan felt very apologetic. It was very difficult for farmers to raise poultry. They would not easily slaughter chickens and ducks until the end of the year. They had only met by chance, but this old granny treated her like her own granddaughter. This made her feel very touched. She repeatedly told the old granny not to worry, but the old granny said that this was a task entrusted to her by the great master, so she had to take good care of herself no matter what. She felt very helpless. This old granny's words were always based on false opinions. It seemed that she had been poisoned by the fraud. She did not know how long she had been in a daze. When she came back to her senses, she saw the person standing by the door. She did not know how long he had been standing there and how much of her embarrassment had been seen by him. Chu Qingyan said embarrassedly, "Why didn't you say that you were here?" He had already knocked on the door before, but she did not hear him. However, seeing her unnatural expression, he did not expose her and walked in with a faint smile. Benefactor noticed this poor monk as soon as he entered. Although she had corrected him many times to let him call her by her name, it was a pity that this person's brain was as stubborn as a wooden fish. In the end, she let him be and did not care what he called her. Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this. She invited him to sit down and personally poured a cup of tea for him. "How has your body been these past 2 days?" Su Jian casually asked when he saw that she was able to land. She was just about to say that she was almost better, but her body was singing the opposite tune. She began to cough violently, and her eyes were red. Su Jian's eyes were filled with worry. He didn't know how to help her and could only quietly wait for her to return to normal. Chu Qingyan said apologetically, "This illness comes like a landslide. I've made a fool of myself." Su Jian faintly smiled. "It's normal for people to suffer from diseases. Benefactor, you don't need to feel sorry." Chu Qingyan nodded. She had taken his advice to heart. "Thank you for taking care of me these past 2 days. The person taking care of you is an elderly person. This penniless monk doesn't dare claim credit," Su Jian said with a smile. She thought about it and agreed, but still said, "The old man took care of me because of you. In the end, I still owe you a favor." Su Jian saw how persistent she was and smiled. He didn't continue the conversation and changed the topic. "Benefactor, do you have something on your mind?" Chu Qingyan raised her head when she heard his words. She happened to see her own confused and helpless expression in his clear eyes. How could he tell? She felt that it was strange, but when she thought about how good he was at fortune-telling, which meant that he could see through people's hearts, she didn't find it strange. "Yes, I'm worried about a lot of things." She nodded honestly. Su Jian frowned slightly. When he was standing by the door earlier, he had sensed that she was in low spirits. It seemed that this was the crux of her illness. "The sky is clear after the rain. Do you want to go out for a walk?" Su Jian invited her. She was a little surprised, but when she remembered that she hadn't left the house since she came here, she agreed. 3 years ago, this penniless monk passed by here and met an elderly person. After learning that her family had passed away, this penniless monk settled her down here. Chu Qingyan didn't know why he would mention that elderly woman. She blinked and replied, "This place is beautiful and quiet. It's suitable for retirement. You've chosen a good place." Su Jian smiled faintly. Actually, whether or not it's suitable for retirement depends on the elderly person's state of mind. If she's immersed in the pain of the past, this place will just be a prison for her. However, this penniless monk is very glad that the elderly person is an open-minded person. She hasn't become dispirited because of the pain of losing her family. She's always smiling and doesn't suffer from illness or misfortune. At first, she was still able to maintain her composure. However, towards the end, she couldn't help but twitch the corners of her mouth. This person seemed to be insinuating something about her between the lines. What are you trying to say? Su Jian raised his eyes, but his gaze didn't fall on her. Instead, it fell on the blooming camellia behind her. Benefactor, you're drawing a circle around a prison. She was stunned. She hadn't expected him to expose her so directly. At this moment, Su Jian's gaze shifted from the beautiful camellia flowers to the face in front of him that was even more delicate than the flowers. He calmly looked straight into her eyes. Benefactor, time flies. Since yesterday's matter is already in the past, why let it disturb your state of mind? Whether it's guilt, self-blame, or dejection and distress, life still has to go on. The sun still rises in the east and sets in the west. Don't let the prison in your heart hold you back from moving forward. In the end, it will become an even heavier shackle. Chu Qingyan was stunned by his words. She didn't know if it was because he often preached about Buddhism, but she had to admit that every word he said touched the bottom of her heart. Everything that had happened in the past few days had imperceptibly destroyed her self-confidence. She had always thought that as long as she was willing to work hard and improve herself, she would be able to stay by Big Ice Cube's side. She fantasized about standing shoulder to shoulder with him. She didn't want to be a burden to him. She wanted to be a barrier that could shelter him from the wind and rain when he was tired or weak. However, this hope was blown to pieces by the storm. She had always been protected, whether it was Big Ice Cube, Dong Ting, or Turin and Water Spirit. Dong Ting had faced death alone because of her. Turin and Water Spirit had died because of her. She couldn't help anyone, but she was a burden to those who had good intentions for her. In this hot summer, she felt cold all over. She couldn't help but slowly crouch down with her arms around her shoulders. Su Jian, I know my own limits. I thought I could protect everyone, but in the end, I became a burden. It was I who implicated those who sincerely treated me. Su Jian was stunned by her sad words. He had long known that there was a prison in her heart, but he didn't know that she had imprisoned herself so deeply. Looking at the woman who was only in her prime, but her face seemed to have weathered the vicissitudes of life. Su Jian's calm heart was suddenly moved by the sadness that flashed through her eyes. Her inner demon had already been born. If it was allowed to run rampant, it would be difficult to help her in the future. Chapter 1373. Benefactor, don't be sad. Blaming yourself won't solve the problem. Su Jian stood by her side, his voice even gentler. I can see that you've done your best. Things are out of your control now. It's better to let nature take its course. I know you're comforting me, but I still can't get over it. Chu Qingyan buried her head between her knees and said hoarsely. The source of all her guilt was panic. She was afraid that her companions who had fought side by side in the past would sacrifice themselves for her. This was something she didn't want to see. More importantly, she couldn't face the big block of ice. She would rather stay here and seal herself up. You're running away, benefactor. Even if you don't want to face it now, things are still going forward. It's constantly affecting the people around you with uncontrollable factors. What you've lost can't be regained, but those who haven't lost can still be saved. If you're addicted to self-imprisonment, by the time you figure it out, it may be too late to save it. Hearing her muttering and combining it with the discussions he heard from the pilgrims who had entered and left the temple in the past 2 days, Su Jian roughly knew what she was worried about and blaming herself for. He put his palms together and continued softly, I advise you not to cherish your gold-threaded robe. When you're young, you should pluck the flowers when they're blooming. Don't wait until the flowers are gone. Su Jian's words caused Chu Qingyan to be slightly stunned. It was as if the dark clouds had suddenly parted to reveal the sun. You're right. Everyone is risking their lives for me. How can I have the nerve to be sad here? This is not my character. If they know, Turan will definitely say that I'm thinking too much, and Dongting will definitely scold me for being pretentious. She looked up at him with sparkling eyes. They were brighter than the scorching sun on the horizon. Her petite body shrank into a small ball in front of him. His usually calm heart was stirred by this person who was like a blazing sun. He wanted to reach out to touch her head to comfort her, but when his fingers were about to reach out, he suddenly realized that his actions were out of his expectations. He couldn't help but withdraw his hand. Instead, he grasped the prayer beads on his wrist and plucked them one by one, trying to calm his heart. Benefactor, it's best that you can think it through. I'm just giving a few pointers. The most important thing is Benefactor's own mentality. The corners of her mouth curled up, and the confidence in her eyes slowly returned. Her eyes were like camellias covered in dew, so beautiful and dazzling. Su Jian's eyebrows twitched, and he turned around in a panic. He tried to recite the Heart Sutra to calm the strange feeling in his heart. Chu Qingyan didn't notice Su Jian's strange behavior. She let out a sigh of relief. Su Jian, thank you for your pointers. Otherwise, I might not have been able to get over this hurdle. Perhaps by the time I wake up, everything would have already reached a point of no return. That would have wasted the efforts of those who did it for me. Benefactor is a person of great wisdom. It's only a matter of time before you walk out, Su Jian replied absent-mindedly. She felt that it was amazing that this slow-witted charlatan could say such nice things. But since he had helped her, she didn't want to tease him. She directly told him her plan. Su Jian, I'll rest for another day. Tomorrow, I'll set out to find my companions. If it weren't for her severe cough, she would have left immediately. Hearing that she was leaving, Su Jian immediately turned around and looked down at the person who was hugging her knees and looking at him innocently. He couldn't help but say, your body hasn't recovered yet. You still need a few days to rest. No need. After thinking it through, I'm eager to return home. Chu Qingyan smiled at him. She didn't notice the flash of disappointment in his eyes. She looked into the distance. They were halfway up the mountain, so the view was excellent. A worried look appeared in her eyes as she continued, I wonder where they are now. I heard that the imperial court has sent troops out of the city to hunt them down. They haven't caught anyone yet, Su Jian replied indifferently. Chu Qingyan's eyes brightened. It seemed that they had already left the city. That couldn't be better. In her happiness, she didn't notice that Su Jian had said that he wouldn't meddle in the affairs of the mortal world. Thank you, Su Jian. She thanked him again. After putting down the heavy burden in her heart, she hadn't rested well for the past few days. Now, tiredness surged into her eyes. She yawned. It seems that I can catch up on sleep today before continuing on my journey. Then why are benefactors still squatting on the ground? My legs are numb. After Chu Qingyan returned to her room, Su Jian stood next to the camellia tree with a blank expression. Today, as he spent time with Chu Qingyan, a strange feeling welled up in his heart. It was an emotion that he had never felt in so many years. It was as if he pitied her when she was sad, worried when she was in pain, and reluctant when she wanted to leave. There was a voice in his heart telling him that he shouldn't have such thoughts, but he didn't reject this feeling. Strictly speaking, Chu Qingyan was just a passerby he met by chance on his path to Buddha. He shouldn't have paid too much attention to her. However, his master had once told him that there was a calamity in his life, and Chu Qingyan was his calamity. So in these years, he had more or less paid attention to her. At first, he didn't take it to heart, but when he saved her again, he found that something seemed to be different. This difference was beyond his understanding. That was why he was standing there, unable to figure it out. Chu Qingyan returned to her room. When she stretched and was about to catch up on sleep, she passed by the window and saw the elegant and upright figure. She couldn't help but sigh. It was a pity that such a handsome male idol had escaped into Buddhism. How many unmarried girls had bitten their handkerchiefs in pity? At this time, the handsome male idol happened to turn around. Their eyes met in midair. Chu Qingyan instinctively smiled at him, but he unexpectedly fled. She couldn't help but reach out to touch her face. Was she so ugly that she couldn't be seen? This fraud's taste was really strange. Chu Qingyan angrily went to catch up on her sleep. However, until the next day, when Chu Qingyan was about to leave with her bag, she didn't see the fraud. She touched her nose. She had clearly told him the time to leave. Didn't he plan to see her off? After a while, the old man said that he might be too busy at the temple to leave. Chu Qingyan thought about it and agreed. So, she bid farewell to the reluctant old man. If she could come back again, she would definitely repay the old man for taking care of her. Chu Qingyan's heart was relieved. The burden was lifted, and her illness was mostly recovered. Chu Qingyan tightened her bag and went down the mountain through the hidden mountain path. Not far away, a man in blue stood in the wind, watching the delicate figure slowly go away. Buddhist disciples should be empty in all 4 aspects, and shouldn't have 7 emotions and 6 desires. In order to get rid of the emotions he shouldn't have, he chose not to see her. Perhaps when they met again, he would still be a Buddhist monk without any distracting thoughts. Chapter 1374. Because of the special situation, Chu Qingyan had asked the old man for a few men's clothes when she went down the mountain. At this time, she was dressed as a man and was walking around the town. This was the town closest to the capital. If she wanted to gather information, this was undoubtedly the best place. The distance was close and the information could be delivered in time. Because she was wearing coarse hemp clothes, she would be more eye-catching if she wore a curtain hat. So she decided to openly show her appearance and found a place to sit down in a tea house. She drank tea while asking for information. Perhaps she had underestimated her appearance. When she entered the tea house, the people who were talking suddenly stopped and stared at her. Because most of them were commoners, they didn't know what was reserved, so their gazes were very bold. Moreover, at some point, many young women had entered the tea house. From time to time, they would use handkerchiefs to cover their faces and coquettishly throw coquettish glances at her. They had ulterior motives. Not only were there coquettish glances, there were also cold eyes. When some young talents saw this face that was more beautiful than a woman's, they couldn't help but secretly despise him. Sissy, what was there to be proud of? But when they saw that he was dressed like he came from a poor family, their hearts felt more balanced. What kind of girl would like this kind of poor boy? The streets were filled with people of Jianghu and many of them were wearing curtain hats. Chu Qingyan held her forehead. She had miscalculated. No matter what, she should have worn a curtain hat to cover her face. Fortunately, no matter how brazen these people were, they didn't dare to approach her. With her shabby appearance, the men didn't want to make friends with her and the women only wanted to look. This was also good. So she was in the mood to pay attention to the news around her. Have you heard? His Majesty is preparing to make a move against His Royal Highness. He is using some false charges to deprive him of the title of Lord. A few days ago, news came that His Majesty had already secretly raided the King of England's residence. Sigh, poor His Royal Highness has served the country all his life, but now he has met with this kind of end. How sad. She didn't expect to hear news about the big ice cube so quickly. Chu Qingyan was first surprised, but then she carefully sipped her tea and listened. Isn't that right? This is called the bow is put away after the birds are gone and the hound is boiled. Take a look, is there anyone who can survive under the eyes of the emperor? Hearing this, Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. The people were not blind and could tell right from wrong. Now that there was peace within and outside the country, the Sichuan emperor came up with this plan of getting rid of the donkey the moment it left the millstone. This was too evil. At this moment, another voice sounded. That's right. Isn't our current peace and prosperity all because of His Royal Highness and his soldiers sacrificing their lives for us? Now that I've heard of his fate, it's truly heartbreaking. But you said that His Royal Highness wasn't sent by the Empress? Logically speaking, he should be the future heir to the throne. Why does His Majesty treat him like this? Someone raised a question. When someone asked, someone answered. Isn't it simple? Because His Majesty doesn't like His Royal Highness and wants his youngest son, the fourth prince, to inherit the throne. So, he wants to get rid of this stumbling block. That's why he wants to punish him. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan was shocked. She didn't think that these people's imaginations were so good that they could actually guess the truth. It was simply 80 to 90% accurate. His Royal Highness is really pitiful. Fortunately, he has safely escaped from the capital. Otherwise, our entire family wouldn't be able to sleep peacefully. An old man sighed heavily at this time. The originally noisy tea house was silent for a moment because of this. The tea in her mouth suddenly became bitter and astringent. Chu Qingyan's expression was sad. Being with the emperor was like being with a tiger. Who knew that one moment you were extremely favored, the next moment you would be thrown into a quagmire? Originally, he just wanted to protect his home and country, but now he had fallen into a state of hiding. It was really sad. Fortunately, the people weren't easy to fool. They were grateful for the contributions that Big Ice Cube had made over the years. They didn't believe those unfavorable rumors. Instead, they cleared his name. Fortunately, Big Ice Cube's efforts over the years hadn't been in vain. She suppressed the chaotic emotions in her heart and continued to calmly listen to the chatter in the tea house. After sitting here for an entire afternoon, she heard some reliable news. Xiao Ran was already engaged to the Jing Mingzhu. In 3 months, he would officially marry Jing Mingzhu. Chu Qingyan raised the corner of her mouth and revealed a mocking smile. Was this what he meant by liking her? She didn't like to share her husband with others, let alone someone who had 3 wives and 4 concubines. She hoped that in the future, he would give up on her. Yesterday, Xiao Ran had already been ordered to become the commander of the army to hunt down Big Ice Cube. He had 30,000 imperial guards by his side, all of whom were skilled in martial arts. This time, the Sichuan emperor was determined to kill this son of his. Chu Qingyan didn't want to stay any longer. After finding out the direction of the army, she immediately put down the silver and turned to leave. The girls who were pretending to drink tea but were actually admiring the beauty saw her leave. They bit their handkerchiefs reluctantly and could only leave one after another. Only the owner of the tea house was counting the silver and smiling so hard that his molars could be seen. However, in the tea house, Pang Huang held a teacup and a trace of light flashed through his eyes. He had worn out iron shoes in fruitless search, but now he found her without any effort. Originally, he had been looking for Chu Qingyan for a few days without any news. He had planned to follow the advice of his subordinates and return home. He hadn't expected to run into her in the tea house. When they were on the battlefield, she was dressed as a man, so when she came in, he immediately recognized her. That feeling of blood boiling filled his body again. He tightly gripped the teacup and revealed a smile. Send people to keep an eye on her, but don't let her find out. She is very vigilant, so if you lose her, this prince will hold you responsible. Yes. Someone immediately replied and went downstairs to arrange it. As the footsteps faded away, Pang Huang looked down through the window. He could see that outstanding-looking person walking down the street like she was taking a stroll. The desire to imprison her under his eyes became stronger and stronger. Chu Qingyan, he had to have her. Chu Qingyan did not know that she was being watched. She found a ready-made clothing store and bought 2 sets of men's clothes. She also bought a curtained hat and put it on. Under the greedy gaze of the shop's lady boss, who wanted to keep her as a son-in-law, Chu Qingyan quickly left. In this world, when they saw a piece of fresh meat, they were all like wolves and tigers. This was simply too terrifying. After she teased herself a few times in her heart, she found an inn on the side of the road to rest her feet. Big Ice Cube must be very worried if he didn't see her. She had to meet up with him as soon as possible. When the sun rose the next day, she checked out of the room and quickly left with her bag. Not long after she left, a group of people came out of the inn and quickly followed her. Chapter 1375. Although she was wearing men's clothes and could avoid the soldiers holding the portraits, for safety's sake, she didn't walk on the main road and took small paths. Moreover, according to the fierce cavalry's style, it was impossible for them to expose themselves in front of everyone, so she did her best to choose a hidden path. She had bought some dry rations beforehand, so if she was hungry, she would take it out to fill her stomach. If she was thirsty, she would find a stream to drink. She had already learned her wilderness survival skills when she was in Lian City. The fierce valiant cavalry were hidden guards that did not appear in the open, and they had to adapt to all kinds of environments. Sometimes, in order to obtain information, they had to stay in the wild grass for 3 days and 3 nights without moving. In those few years, she had also trained with them, not only to improve her own abilities, but also to be able to deal with any sudden situations. Thinking back to those times, although it was a bit bitter, it was very fulfilling and filled her with nostalgia. She tightly gripped the water bottle in her hand. No matter what, she had to find them. However, at this time, she felt that something was off. Her eyes fell onto the swaying leaves not far away and her eyes narrowed. She pretended to casually drink a mouthful of water, but she already had a plan in her heart. She thought that she had changed her clothes and darkened her face, but she was still being watched. After resting for a bit and recovering her strength, she pretended not to notice the other side's tracks before continuing forward with her bag. This time she chose a more remote and narrow mountain path. Like this, if the other side wanted to avoid being discovered, they wouldn't dare follow too closely. Like this, she would have enough time to hide herself. After a few blinks of an eye, there was already no one in front of her. Pang Huang stood on the mountain path and looked at the endless green forest. He gave a soft snort. She definitely hasn't gone far. You guys split up, I don't believe this prince can't catch her. After a few leaps, Chu Qingyan stopped on a huge rock under a tree. She fanned herself with her hand, thinking that she had shaken them off. She heaved a sigh of relief and wanted to strike while the iron was hot to continue her journey. However, her ears twitched, and she stopped in her tracks. Several large men with cold expressions appeared in front of her. She took a few steps back and found that there were several people blocking her path. She knit her brows, knowing that it was the group of people following her. Who are you? What are you trying to do? Although these people were dressed like Sichuan people, their appearance was rough, and their bodies were stronger than the Sichuan people. She guessed that these people were not Sichuan people at all. These people didn't intend to respond to her at all. They just looked at her coldly. Just as she was getting impatient and was about to make a move, she heard a rustling sound from the grass beside her. Could it be that the main character had arrived? Young General Chu, I haven't seen you for a long time. I'm afraid it's not in line with the reputation of Sichuan, a country of etiquette, right? Chu Qingyan's grip on her sword tightened when she heard the familiar and chilling voice. She turned around in disbelief. When she saw Pang Huang, who was dressed in a navy blue robe and had a jade-like face, standing in front of the thicket, she felt like an egg could be stuffed into her mouth. Who could tell her, why would the crown prince of the neighboring country appear here? Although he couldn't see the change in her expression because of the veil, he could still figure it out from her movements. Pang Huang walked forward a few steps until she vigilantly tensed her body. Only then did he stop 10 feet away. Seeing this prince, you seem very surprised. But this prince feels very honored that young General Chu has not forgotten this prince. His confident voice had a satisfied smile. Pang Huang stared at her with sparkling eyes. Chu Qingyan's lips twitched and she said in a somewhat speechless voice, who wouldn't be surprised to see the crown prince of an enemy country appear in their territory. Moreover, it has only been half a year since we lost to your southern blue country. This general is not so forgetful that I can't even recognize the enemy's appearance. The large man beside Pang Huang was about to angrily teach her a lesson when he heard this, but Pang Huang raised his hand to stop him. He smiled and his eyes revealed a look of admiration. "You're still so eloquent. With just a few words, you're able to make people panic. You're truly worthy of being the famous young General Chu on the battlefield." Chu Qingyan replied with a chuckle. "The crown prince still hides a knife in his smile. With just a few words, you're able to make people have no choice but to treat you seriously. You're truly worthy of being the southern blue country's famous smiling tiger. Admirable, admirable. Bold, you actually dare to insult our crown prince." The attendant immediately raised his sword to counter. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and looked at Pang Huang with a provocative gaze. Pang Huang waved his subordinates away and looked at the beautiful jade-like girl in front of him. His eyes sparkled. Young General Chu is very brave. I wonder if this prince has the honor to invite the young general for a drink. This invitation probably had an ulterior motive. Chu Qingyan gave a cold smile. "The crown prince's invitation is this one's honor, but this one is in a hurry, so I'm afraid I can't accompany you. If there is a chance, let's chat again another day." After saying this, she cupped her hands and looked at the blocked path, indicating for her subordinates to move aside. The smile on Pang Huang's face did not change. "Young general, this prince knows that you're in a hurry to find someone, but in this vast sea of people, you won't be able to find anyone in a short time. Since there's no time like the present, why don't we sit down first and have a chat? This prince is very interested in the tactics you use on the battlefield. I'm indebted to Crown Prince Pang for thinking so highly of me. However, this one is in a hurry, so I really can't drink with Crown Prince Pang. I ask for Crown Prince's forgiveness." Chu Qingyan's tone was cold, and she was just short of telling them to scram. No matter what, Pang Huang was still the crown prince of a country. Although he appreciated her, seeing that she didn't know what was good for her again and again, the smile on his face completely disappeared. His voice was filled with pressure. "Are you planning to refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit?" Chu Qingyan's face did not reveal anything, but her palm had already begun to move. "This one hasn't tried being forced to drink a forfeit yet, so how about I ask for some advice today?" He had never seen such a stubborn person in front of him, so his heart was filled with anger. "All right, then let this prince see how much your martial arts have improved after not seeing you for half a year." Hearing his tone, she felt uncomfortable, but this was what she wanted to do. Dong Ting had transferred all his internal energy to her, but she still had not tested just how much her cultivation had improved. "Go!" Pang Huang took a step back and the people behind him immediately surrounded Chu Qingyan. They surrounded her and coldly pointed their swords at her. "Bullying the weak with numbers, bullying the weak with strength, it really is the style of your southern blue." Chu Qingyan's lips curled as she spoke without any mercy. "You..." Pang Huang's face was very ugly. Before he could finish, the other side had already moved. The long sword came out of its sheath and sand flew into the air. The falling leaves and flowers were dazzling. Chapter 1376. Chu Qingyan had always wanted to know how much her skills had improved. Thus, when she saw that her opponent, who was extremely skilled in martial arts, was knocked back with a single strike, she was instantly stunned. She instantly killed her opponent like this? Dong Ting really left her a large pleasant surprise. Before she had time to be happy, the other side became even more irritable because she had injured their comrade. All kinds of life-threatening moves were sent at her. Pang Huang, who had been watching from the side, saw her easily take care of one of his guards. It would be a lie if he wasn't shocked. When did this person's martial arts progress this fast? It could simply be described as terrifying. His careless eyes suddenly became serious as he narrowed his eyes, not letting go of a single move from her. Actually, her moves were the same, but when she used them, they were several times stronger than before. Although she had not completely digested the internal energy Dong Ting gave her, it was more than enough to deal with these people. She was like a slippery loach as she swam among these people. The guards fell one by one, and when she pulled back her sword for the last time, the ground was littered with people groaning in pain. Her lips curled and then she turned to take care of the final enemy, Pang Huang. However, when she pointed at him, an archer appeared out of nowhere and aimed at her. The tip of the arrow shone eerily under the sun, almost blinding her eyes. She did not look at the archers and turned to look at Pang Huang standing behind them. Her lips curled into a faint smile. Prince Pang, is this the demeanor of a country's ruler? Fighting with numbers? Bullying others? How could Pang Huang not hear her taunting, but he had always been thick-skinned, especially after meeting her. Many thanks for little General Chu's praise. Chu Qingyan coldly looked at him. Prince Pang, since you already know my identity, there is no need to call me little general. It makes me feel uncomfortable hearing it. Pang Huang gave a shrug. This prince thought you would like it, so of course I don't mind calling you Qingyan. However, you'll blame me for not knowing how to be gentle. I don't know why, but hearing this girl's name from your mouth, my entire body feels uncomfortable. It's best if you know one thing, we aren't familiar with each other, so don't call me by my name. Otherwise, it will annoy me. When she was separated from Big Ice Cube, her heart was filled with worry. Now that this Qing Yao Jin had appeared, she was filled with anger. Chu Qingyan did not care about his identity as the crown prince at all as she casually taunted him. Being in a high position, he was used to being welcomed by others. Now that he was being mocked by her again and again, even if Pang Huang had a good impression of her, he couldn't help being filled with anger. His hands clenched fists as he suppressed his anger to suppress it all to suppress it. But when the guard beside him asked if he should shoot, he made a hand gesture, indicating for them not to act rashly. He walked out under Chu Qingyan's provocative gaze and his voice was filled with power. Little general, there is an old saying that a scholar who has been away for 3 days should be looked at with new eyes. After not seeing you for half a year, your martial arts have improved quite a bit, so this prince wants to ask you for advice. Reaching out his hand, someone handed over his large blade. Chu Qingyan unconsciously tightened her grip on the sword in her hand. She had fought with Pang Huang before and his martial arts were unfathomable. In the valley, she could feel that he was not using his full strength. Now that her martial arts had increased quite a bit, she could fight with him and test the depths of his martial arts. But her mouth still did not let him off. You were heavily injured half a year ago, could it be that you've already recovered? If you haven't, wouldn't it be said that this miss is bullying a handicapped person? Pang Huang almost couldn't hold the long blade in his hand. This person really didn't know what to say. Although he felt that she had a sharp tongue before, it wasn't to the point of being poisonous. It seemed like he still didn't understand her. Once he caught her, he would definitely not let her leave his body and let her know just how strong he was. You want to anger me? It's a pity that you've made a mistake. Chu Qingyan gave a soft snort. She never thought that he would see through her provocation this quickly. Once a person was angered, they would reveal a flaw, but it was a pity that he did not fall for it. Pang Huang felt that this person really was a strange girl. At this time, she could still scheme against him with just a few words. It was a pity that after suffering from her, he had learned his lesson and would not fall for her trap so easily. She raised her head to look at the sky. If she didn't leave this place before the sun set, then she might become a snack for the wild beasts in the mountains. She couldn't delay any longer. Seeing that this person seemed to have the mood to continue chatting with her, Chu Qingyan's lips twitched. Before he could open his mouth, she took the initiative to swing her sword at him. This sword was fast and fierce. Pang Huang's gaze fell onto her white as jade fingers. Then he raised his blade to block and counterattacked. She did not think that she would be able to take care of him with a single sword, so even though her first move was broken, she still had another move. Pang Huang knew that her cultivation had made a large leap, but he never thought that it would be to this extent. When experts exchanged blows, as long as they touched the sword, they would know the other party's strength. It could be seen that her cultivation was deep, but he could feel that she was not that proficient in using her internal energy. This was an opportunity that he could take advantage of. When the two of them brushed past each other, Pang Huang suddenly reached out his other hand to grab the brim of her hat. With a little force, the curtain hat fell into his hand. When the two of them landed, Chu Qingyan turned around and her cold gaze fell onto the curtain hat in his hand. Why did this person grab her hat for? Crazy. Pang Huang casually threw the curtain hat away and then looked up at her. Her hair was tied up high with a white jade hairpin. 2 strands of hair fell down in front of her forehead, adding a bit of elegance. Her ink-black eyes were large, sparkling under the sun. Her snow-white skin and red lips, her small face was so delicate that people couldn't help but want to reach out and touch it. He didn't know if it was softer than spring water. Her red clothes were like fire and her waist was tied with a belt of the same color, making her seem even more slender. She held a sword in her hand that shined with a silver light. Her entire body seemed to be shrouded in a holy light, making people's hearts yearn for her. From the moment he saw her today, his heart was itching. He wanted to take off this hindrance hat and see her beauty. Now that he saw her, a jade-like beauty could not be better. He could feel the blood in his body surging. He had to make her stay. Even if he had to imprison her by his side, he would not hesitate to break her wings. Moreover, he had to take her down today. Otherwise, if he wanted to catch her next time, it would not be that easy. Chu Qingyan naturally did not know what he was thinking. She only felt that his gaze on her body was so hot that it made her feel irritated. She looked around, thinking of a way to escape. Qingyan, have you ever thought of leaving Xiaosu and me? Chapter 1377. He called her by her name and did not address himself as such. Instead, he addressed her as I. This surprised Chu Qingyan a little. She did not understand why he was suddenly showing her kindness. Furthermore, this kindness was based on his gaze, which made her uncomfortable. What do you mean? Chu Qingyan looked at him coldly. She held her sword in front of her, a common defensive posture. Pang Huang felt helpless. This person was still guarded against him, but her temper had always been like this. He should have gotten used to it long ago. He raised his eyebrows and chuckled, Qingyan, you also know the current situation in Sichuan. If you continue to stay by Xiaosu's side, you won't have a good ending. But if you leave Xiaosu, those people won't let you off. After all, you are the future consort of the King of England, so for your safety, you should seek greater protection. After he finished speaking, he saw her looking at him silently. He thought that he had persuaded her, so he immediately said, Xiaosu offended your emperor. If you want to escape unscathed, there's no one more suitable than me. I'll still say the same thing. As long as you leave Xiaosu, I won't pursue your past, and will give you everything you want. Thank you for remembering my identity as the consort of the King of England. She automatically ignored the word future, then sneered, and you say it as if you know what I want. From the first time they met until now, every time he saw her, he would spare no effort to persuade her to betray the ice cube and leave with him. She was already numb to rejecting him. How could this person be so blind? She was really worried about how this person would harm the common people after inheriting the Southern Blue Throne. However, this was not within her scope of concern. Pang Huang didn't seem to understand the sarcasm in her words. He humbly and seriously asked, you can tell me what you want. I believe that I won't do worse than Xiaosu. Chu Qingyan really wanted to laugh when she heard this. How could this person be so confident that he could compare to the ice cube? A despicable person was invincible, as expected. She also answered him very seriously, what if I say that I want to stay by my highness' side? Can the crown prince even satisfy this? The smile on Pang Huang's face instantly cracked. He felt that his dignity had been severely trampled on. If it weren't for the fact that she was important to him, he wouldn't have lowered his pride and followed her. Did she know how many women in the southern blue continent would strip naked just to get his attention? This person simply didn't know what was good for her. However, he didn't know what to do with her. He was afraid that he would accidentally hurt her. Just as he was hesitating whether or not to shoot her down, Chu Qingyan saw the opportunity. A gust of wind blew, and she quickly took out a cloth bag and threw it at them. Crown Prince, be careful. An arrow pierced through the air and shot towards the cloth bag. The cloth bag exploded and the white stuff immediately scattered in all directions. When the wind blew, it blurred everyone's eyes. Chu Qingyan, who was standing in the wind, snorted and then turned around to hide in the lush forest. This was the flower she had bought from the inn's waiter before she left. It was to prepare for an emergency. She didn't think that it would really come in handy. She hoped that it would delay them and give her time to escape. Although her martial arts had improved, it was still difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. She didn't dare to be careless. Of the 36 stratagems, escaping was the best strategy. After the powder dissipated, Pang Huang's group was covered in flour from head to toe. They looked very miserable. "Your Highness," the person ran away. Looking at the empty mountain path, Pang Huang wiped his face and sinisterly said, "She couldn't have run far. Send out the signal and have the others quickly search the mountain." Chu Qingyan, "This time I came prepared. I don't believe that after I set up an inescapable net, you'll still be able to escape from my grasp." Chu Qingyan, who was using her qinggong to quickly shuttle through the mountain forest, suddenly sneezed. She rubbed her nose. Who was it that was speaking ill of her behind her back? She didn't have time to think about it and continued on her way. However, she had underestimated the size of this mountain forest. After rushing for more than 2 hours, she still hadn't walked out of this large mountain range. She even got lost. Seeing that the sun was approaching the western mountains, she couldn't help but feel a little anxious. At this time, a tiger's roar came from the distance. A flock of birds flew with the wind. In this lush forest, it gave people a strange and eerie feeling. In the 5 years that she had stayed with Big Ice Cube, they had often entered the mountain forest to train. They knew that the more tranquil a place was, the more dangerous it was. Thinking of Pang Huang's group from before, she couldn't help but secretly curse. There really was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. It seemed like she wouldn't be able to leave this place tonight. She hoped that she wouldn't encounter any wild beasts and that she wouldn't be caught by Pang Huang's people. Just as she was preparing to find a place to hide and rest for the night, her ears twitched. There were dozens of people flying in her direction. She couldn't help but throw away her bag. These people were really like ghosts that wouldn't disperse. She once again flew forward. However, this time she found that there were people not only behind her, but also on her left and right. She frowned. Was she surrounded? There was no one in front of her, but she had a premonition that someone was waiting for her in front. Sure enough, when she rushed out of the lush forest, the view in front of her suddenly widened. She was at the edge of a cliff, and there was a tall and straight figure with his back facing her, as if he was admiring the sunset that was about to set in the west. "Pang Huang, what do you want?" Chu Qingyan didn't have the leisure to look at the beautiful golden light. Her tone was filled with anger. Pang Huang sighed. It was such a beautiful day, but she only cared about questioning and didn't know how to appreciate it. She had really let down his good intentions. He slowly turned around and looked at the young girl who was bathed in the sunset. His eyes were filled with flames. "Come with me to the southern Blue Mountains. In your dreams." Chu Qingyan refused without thinking. These 2 words were very clean, not leaving him any face at all. Pang Huang's heart was filled with anger, but he didn't try to reason with her. "Qingyan, what is so good about Xiao Su that you are this loyal to him? If he was sincere to you, you wouldn't have fallen into this kind of situation, right? You're wrong about one thing." "What is it?" "I am not loyal to him, I am in love with him." Pang Huang was stunned. The person in front of him was not ashamed to admit her feelings for another person at all. This kind of firm and loyal appearance moved his heart even more than her beautiful face. This made him even more determined to obtain her. "I wanted to ask you to come with me, but you kept rejecting me, so this prince can only use force." He spoke in a dignified manner, like he was innocent. Chu Qingyan pulled out her sword again. "Then let's see if you have the skills. Even if she died, she wouldn't fall into his hands." The pursuers behind her closed in on her from 3 sides. Even the light of the setting sun couldn't warm up the cold sword tips. Perhaps she would die here today. It was a pity she couldn't see the big ice block's final side. At this time, the cry of an eagle came from the bottom of the cliff. Other than her, no one else noticed it. Chapter 1378. A flock of birds flew up in a panic from the bottom of the cliff, flying in the direction of the setting sun. Following this, wolf howls came from not far away. It was a bit more familiar than the wolf howls from before. The fingers holding the long sword trembled slightly, but her lips couldn't help curling into a smile. It was filled with surprise, joy, emotion, complicated emotions, and excitement. Pang Huang did not understand why she could still smile at this time, but the smile under her beautiful face was as beautiful as a butterfly breaking out of its cocoon. It made him lose his mind and he even forgot to give the order. This was the time. Chu Qingyan did not pay attention to the opponent behind her. She raised her sword and stabbed in Pang Huang's direction. When the sword arrived in front of him, Pang Huang finally came back to his senses. He took a few steps back and suddenly remembered that there was a cliff behind him, so he immediately dodged to the side. Chu Qingyan had never thought that she would be able to take his life like this, and that was not her goal. She stepped onto a rock at the edge of the cliff and turned to look at Pang Huang. As he cried out in surprise, she jumped forward without a care for her own safety. Qingyan, Pang Huang felt as if his heart had been grabbed by a pair of invisible hands, suffocating him to the point that he could not breathe. He immediately reached out to pull her over, but her clothes slipped past his palm, like the mountain wind, he could not catch them at all. He subconsciously wanted to jump down with her, but was held back by the guards behind him, who were drenched in cold sweat from fright. "Your Highness, you have to calm down. Don't do something stupid." "Something stupid?" That's right, why would this Chu Qingyan do something stupid? He just wanted her to leave the Sichuan with him, so why would she rather jump off the cliff than leave with him? This fact was something that the proud Pang Huang could not accept. He threw off the subordinates holding him. After making it clear to them that he wouldn't jump down in a hot-headed manner, they wouldn't stare at him like this. He patted the creases on his clothes and then looked down from the cliff. He could only see the clouds and mist that blocked his line of sight. Just now, he remembered that she was like a fire butterfly transformed from a ball of fire. She plunged headfirst into the misty clouds and then disappeared without a trace. For the first time in his life, he felt helpless and bitter in his heart. Did such a fiery woman disappear from his life just like that? While the top of the cliff was silent, the bottom of the cliff was bustling with noise and excitement. Chu Qingyan was lying on her stomach among the black feathers. She poked the eagle's back and said sourly, "As the owner, I don't have enough to eat and wear, but you've put on so much weight. It's really infuriating to compare yourself to your pet." Little Hai, who was under her, flapped its wings in protest. If it wasn't full, how could it have the strength to look for her? If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have come to pick up her heartless master. At the same time, several of Xiao Hai's subordinates were also carrying Bai Yutang, snowflake cake, and glutinous rice ball towards them. The moment they saw her, they immediately started howling. If they weren't in mid-air, they would have jumped over and pounced on her. Then, they would run into her arms and act coquettishly. Looking at the light in their eyes that couldn't be ignored, and hearing their low cries, Chu Qingyan's eyes couldn't help but turn red. During this period of hiding, she really missed them to death. The great change that day came so suddenly. She didn't dare to imagine whether Xiao Lai Qi and the others could protect them. She missed them so much the whole way. Now that she saw them alive and kicking in front of her eyes, she felt like she was dreaming. Seeing her watery eyes, they thought something happened to her and clamored to rush over. She saw the eagles trembling in fear and immediately shouted, "Lie down, don't move." Only then did Bai Yutang and the others obediently lie down on the eagle's back. They didn't dare to move, but their eyes were glued to her body, unable to leave for even a moment. She then threw a big smile at them, indicating that they should stay there obediently. At this time, Xiao Hai tilted its head and called out to her, as if asking her opinion on where to go. They had already been circling in the air for a while. Chu Qingyan looked down. There were brambles and thorns below, making it difficult to land. She changed her mind and looked at the few lying on the ground. In this forest, how many companions can you gather? Bai Yutang didn't answer, but used actions to prove everything. It sat up and howled to the sky. Just as its voice fell, wolf howls sounded one after another. In a moment, the whole forest was filled with wolf howls. Chu Qingyan grinned. As expected of her family's treasure, its summoning technique was so shocking. Let's go and take revenge for your beloved master. Glutinous rice ball and snowflake cake immediately sat up, revealing their sharp fangs. Daring to bully their master, they didn't want to live anymore. Pang Huang stood silently at the edge of the cliff. He didn't make a sound, and his subordinates also didn't dare to make a sound. However, the quiet bottom of the cliff suddenly became noisy. There was the sound of something breaking through the air, as well as the cries of eagles and wolves. Following that, a gust of air rushed up to the sky. The wind and waves rushed to his cheeks. Pang Huang was so shocked that he couldn't help but take a few steps back. Right at this moment, a fiery red figure jumped out from the bottom of the cliff. Her black hair and snow-white skin were so dazzling. Other people were great rocks that rose with the wind in a day, soaring 90,000 miles in the sky. However, she was an eagle that soared high in the sky. Her domineering appearance was accompanied by a lethal pet. Chu Qingyan sat upright in the air and looked down at the frightened crowd. Her red lips curled up. You didn't expect me to still be alive, right? Compared to the shock of the others, Pang Huang heaved a sigh of relief. His eyes looked at her greedily, as if he wanted to imprint her appearance in his heart. When he was standing at the edge of the cliff just now, he felt as if a corner of his heart was missing. If he couldn't see her again in the future, how many surprises would he lose in life? Now that she had once again descended from the sky, his heart was filled with joy and surprise. The feeling of regaining something that he had lost was simply too wonderful. Chu Qingyan saw that he didn't answer her question. Instead, he stared at her with a gaze that she couldn't understand and even smiled. The corner of her mouth twitched. This person couldn't have been scared out of his wits by her, right? However, she had patience. The pets behind her who were protecting their master had already lost their patience. They howled to the sky and jumped from the back of the eagle into the crowd, beginning to tear and bite. Pang Huang immediately ordered people to resist. However, in the blink of an eye, dozens of fierce wolves appeared around them and pounced on them without any explanation. Not long after, miserable cries came from below. Chu Qingyan snorted softly. She had no interest in staying to watch the battle between humans and wolves. She had more important things to do. She called back Glutinous Rice Ball and the others and prepared to leave on the eagle. Pang Huang, who was in the middle of dealing with the wolf pack, saw that she was about to leave and immediately shouted, "Qingyan, you have a unique ability, so why do you still want to stay by Xiao Su's side? If you follow him, you have no future." Chu Qingyan didn't even look at him as she whispered in Little Hai's ear, "Let's go find His Highness and Father." Little C chirped happily. It turned around and flew towards the setting sun with her. White Jade Ball and the others howled at their wolf pack a few times, telling them to properly entertain these evil people who bullied their master before leaving in satisfaction. Pang Huang looked at the person riding the wind and his heart was filled with unwillingness and jealousy. "Xiao Su, one day, I will make you crawl at my feet."